Okay, can I have your attention, please? We're ready to start our board meeting, and I would like to point out that here in the front are the sign-up sheets for people who would like to make comments before and after the meeting, and if you would, don't be embarrassed, just walk up and jot your name down here in the beginning. It would certainly be fine. We're going to start with the pledge, and we'll establish quorum, and then we have some guests here that are going to make a presentation on the aeration project. We don't want to hold them up, and then we'll proceed with our meeting according to the agenda. So, if you would all please stand. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Madam Secretary, can we call the roll?
President Don Wells.
Here.
Vice President Marilyn Stout. Here. Second Vice President Al Roper.
Here.
Secretary Molly Knotts. I'm here. Treasurer Bill Tubbs.
Here. Director
Scott DeFilippis.
Here.
And Director Ron Spooner.
Here.
All are intended.
We've established quorum, and our meeting can now proceed. And I want to have the honor of introducing Chris Byrne of Vertex Water Features, and they're going to make a presentation for us as to what's going to happen here in the short term regarding our lakes. And I turn this over to you, Chris, and I will move out of your way.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now? Is there a button on it? There we go. That's loud. Thank you for having me here this evening. Appreciate the opportunity to explain to you a little bit about the project we hope to endeavor upon here. It's to circulate your lakes with our pond aeration equipment. I've got a sample of our equipment sitting here by the table by me. You can take a look at that if you like. And I'm going to go through a slideshow here that will basically show us all the equipment locations that we've come up with. We've worked closely with Bose Electric. Steve Hayden is here. He'll speak a little bit later. And we've came up with a plan to have the fewest number of locations possible as remotely away from people's living spaces as possible. So I'll go ahead and move through here. We'll start at the south end of the community. This is the Veterans Gate. There's an existing power supply there. Right in the median, right by the gate, we're going to place a cabinet there. And then we're going to do a horizontal bore under the road and over to the southeast corner of lake number 3. We're going to place a valve box in the ground there. So there's the cabinet, there's the pipe run, and there's the valve box. And then we're going to have our 4 air stations going throughout the lake. This was an ideal location because there's already an existing power supply, and the cabinet is nowhere near anybody's living space. The next location, there's an existing power supply here, and we've put 2 cabinets at this location here, one to service all these lakes on the west side of the road, and then I'll have another slide to show you 3 more lakes that are getting serviced. From these cabinet locations, horizontal bores will go to the lake. At the lake's edge, there'll be some valve boxes buried in the ground. They'll feed air to through this pipe, which goes through a lake connector into this lake, to these air stations, and then through lake connector pipes to these 2 lakes also. We've realized that if we can get one cabinet to service several lakes, that it means you as a community have to purchase less new electric services, less electrical infrastructure, and there'll be actually less cabinets at various locations. So here's the other side of that plan. There again is the other cabinet, a valve box there, and then we'll get the air stations in Lake 7, run through a lake connector pipe to Lake 9, another valve box in the ground there, all of those air stations in Lake 9, and then again through another lake connector up to Site 11 and getting 3 air stations there, all from one location. Here's another location we have. This is a cabinet that's going to be located by the tennis courts right across from the clubhouse we're in here. That's going to circulate the air with 2 air stations in Lake 16, go under the road through a lake connector pipe to Site 15 and put the air stations there too. Let me go back real quick. I think I might have missed one. Yes. Here's another one here. This is the cabinet's going to be located right here. We're going to get lakes 13 and then through a lake connector pipe to site 14 and get all those lakes circulated also. This next system is at our clubhouse right here where we are. Back behind the basketball courts, there's an existing power supply. We're going to run a horizontal bore under the playground area. We're going to place a valve box in the ground in the corner of lake number 17 there, circulate all the air stations in number 17, then go through a lake connector pipe up to number 20, put a valve box there, and circulate that one also. So you can see the theme here to find good neutral locations and existing power supplies. As we move up to the north end, we're going to place a cabinet here by the road. It's going to have a horizontal bore going over to the lake. There's going to be a valve box circulating all of the air stations in Lake 19, and then through a lake connector pipe down to Lake 18. A little further north, we're going to put another cabinet by the road up there, a valve box by the lake bank, circulate Lake 23, through a lake connector pipe down to Lake 22, and circulate that lake also. This lake is a little far away from all the others. It's a couple blocks between them, so this is the only lake we have where there's just one system for one lake. The cabinet's going to go there by the road. The valve box will go here, and then we have the air stations for that. And last but not least, at the north end, we'll have one cabinet location here, and we'll circulate both of these lakes via this lake connector pipe. So that's my presentation. That's all the equipment locations. I knew you people would be curious about that. Are there any questions? Okay. Oh, yes. Go ahead.
Is it on? Okay, good. Do you have an idea of the, I guess you could call it decibel sound level that may come out of that machine?
Yes. Most of these cabinets measure at about 50 decibels at 10 feet, which is quieter than the human voice. It sounds, it's a humming sound. It's not as loud as a pool pump or a central air conditioner unit. Our cabinets here actually have sound insulation padding on the insides. We have double filter intake elements to muffle the sound. The louvered wall of these cabinets have a aluminum baffle on them to prevent the sound waves from coming out. Our equipment is the quietest that money can buy.
Just one more question in terms of efficiency.
Yes.
How about the electric draw on that? Do we have an idea?
Yes, I could give you a comparison to the floating fountain that's out here in the lake. Most of these motors are 1/3 horsepower or 1/2 horsepower motors, which is just a fraction of the size of that fountain. So they only draw a few amps. It'd be much less power consumed.
Is this like a bubbler in a fish tank? Is it going to be bubbling?
It's similar to a bubbler in a fish tank. These compressors are going to pump air down to the air stations at the bottom of the lake. They look kind of like this. This is a flexible membrane diffuser. It's perforated. When air pressure is applied to the black membrane, it expands. Tiny holes open up and release bubbles. Those bubbles, as they rise from the bottom of the surface, will entrain the water from the bottom of the lake, carry it to the surface, and expose it to the atmosphere. And that's going to circulate your lakes. I know that a lot of data was collected, and we did find that the lakes, since inception, have actually been deep enough that they formed layers and have a cooler, denser anoxic layer at the bottom. And you can change that with this technology.
Are you doing all of them? All the lakes?
Yes, we're doing all the lakes except for the big park lake number 2, and then lake number 4. Both of those have shoreline on the western side that actually has other owners. And I think that in the future there may be some projects that they're going to undertake over there.
I'd like to ask everyone in the audience to go to one of the mics when you ask your question, because it's being streamed, and we want to make sure that everybody that's watching, not here in the room, hears the questions that you ask, please.
Okay.
Speaker as well, Don. He needs to talk to the mic too.
I'll make sure to do that.
Okay.
All right, so if there's no other questions, I want to introduce our partner on this project. Oh, okay. We'll get him a mic here in a sec.
I was just curious as to the efficiency. How many times do you expect the water to turn over per hour or per day?
That's an excellent question. The gentleman is asking how much circulation are these systems going to produce? We went to a lot of trouble. We spent days of work coming out here, launching a boat in most of these lakes, collecting a lot of water volume data, water quality data. That all went to our design department. The folks in the design department looked at that information, utilized it to properly size these systems. They're all going to circulate the lakes at least 1.5 times, sometimes much more than that.
Per what?
1.5 turnovers per day.
And that's going to be sufficient?
Yes, that's more than sufficient. Lee County actually has a mandate that any new lake excavated over 12 feet has to have a destratification system put in it that does 1 turnover per day, and we're exceeding that by 50% or more. Yes.
Will these run 24 hours a day or a time?
Yeah, yes, they're designed for continuous duty.
Thank you.
Are they in series or are they in parallel? In other words, the last one on the line will be as powerful as the first one in line?
They're all controlled by their own valve. Yes.
What's the warranty on?
The microphone, please.
What's the warranty on them?
We have an industry-leading warranty. Everything inside the cabinet has a 3-year warranty. The air stations at the bottom of the pond have a 5-year, no questions asked warranty. The bottom line tubing that we utilize has a 15-year warranty. And the cabinet itself has a lifetime warranty against rust. And those warranties are backed up by our local service department. We build and manufacture this equipment at our headquarters in Pompano Beach. We have a half a dozen factory-trained technicians here on the Gulf Coast ready to stand by that warranty. It's the best you can get. I don't see any more hands. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to Bose Electric. Steve Hayden is going to come up and explain a little bit about the electrical component to getting power to all these air stations and cabinets.
Okay, just real quick about Bose Electric. We've actually partnered with Sandoval since 2012, so we've been out here quite a bit on a number of different projects. Some of the things that we do in addition to all electrical, we do gates and access entry. We recently installed the gates and barrier arm systems on Pine Island. And just to kind of talk a little bit about where our partnership there is primarily the gates and the barrier arms. And barrier basically is the mechanism to trigger those barrier arms. So I know after we got the recent install done, there was a long delay. That's when Envera came in and started doing their job. So, but that was a great project. We were glad to partner with you on that and hope you enjoyed that as well. In addition to that, we're a large generator company, and so we do a lot of generators, and then we also have a propane and gas division within our business. So just a little bit about Bose Electric. Been in business for about 45 years, and we're a family and veteran-owned business. So there's a couple pictures up here of that new gate, and then there's some pictures of the Trafalgar entrance as well. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I have kind of the same diagrams that Chris has that talks about the various different locations and all. Where we came in and really partnered was we originally were asked to provide a proposal for putting pump stations at the base of each one of these lakes. So where Chris kind of talked about, you know, the wires kind of tying in, or the hoses tying in at the base of the lake, we were asked to basically run electric to that location. Kind of a neat thing, Chris and I met on site. We walked every one of these locations and really adjusted each one of those locations. And what we ended up doing was optimizing the location for the box that he spoke about. And then we're still running conduit, but we're going to run air tubing through that conduit versus conductors. So when you're running copper conductors versus air tube, there's a big cost savings in that. So that cost savings that Chris and I really were able to come together with was over $50,000. So that was a significant cost savings with the partnership that we established out there. So I guess one reason we got a little bit of time on the stage this morning was from that electrical standpoint. But all the stars up there on the map, those are all the locations. There's 10 different locations. That's going to feed 11 different boxes that are out here, and we'll tie the electric into each one of them. So I do have the details of how those are going to go for each one of those locations, but like I said, I think Chris kind of went into pretty good detail with his overall diagrams. Any questions on our portion of this project?
What's the voltage on those?
What, some of them are 240. He asked what was the voltage on them. Some of them are 240, some of them are 110. So there's two different size boxes. So. Yes, sir.
How do you meter the use for payment by the HOA? How will that be done?
So each one of these, I told you 10 locations, so each one of these primarily is going to have a permit pulled. We're going to have to find an existing transformer and then establish a meter to that transformer and then electrical service from there. So it's a pretty extensive job to go through and do all that stuff, but those meters, each one of those meters will come back as basically an electrical bill.
Thank you, thank you.
There's actually some that already have meters.
That's correct, yes. Some of the locations already do have meters and power source. Chris mentioned like Veterans Gate. We're just going to tie into a current electrical panel there. But there's, I think 7 of them are brand new meter establishments. So we had to work with LCEC on which transformers we could tie into and all. Been a lot of work on this project already, a lot of background work that's already taken place. But just to kind of let you know some of the stuff that's going to happen, we will have a boring company that will be boring some pipe across the road, similar to what we did at Pine Island recently. So that boring company will come in, bore all the pipe for us to come in to outfit either the airlines or the electrical conductors in that conduit. So. And one other thing, so there is a light project as well that we might be able to tie into this, so there's some synergies there. Then we're working with the board on that to potentially hit some additional synergies and being able to tie in some of those light posts. So, any other questions? No?
Thank you.
Let me go.
Thank you all for coming and enlightening us as to what the project is like. And if there's anyone in the audience that would like to have some information about their specific later, we can probably make that available to you because we have the original diagrams that they've put on the screen here, and it can be zeroed in so you know exactly what your street is and what it looks like. Did anyone sign the resident comment sheet here? And then we'll reserve that for comments after the meeting, and if you come up with a question you want to ask, you can jot your name down and we'll talk to you after. Molly, we need to have the minutes and approval.
The first set of minutes I'm asking the board to approve are the Saturday, March 9th, 2019 organizational meeting minutes.
Move to approve. I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The second meeting minutes I'm asking the board to make a motion to approve are the Thursday, March 21st, 2019 Board of Director meeting minutes.
Motion to approve 30 March 21st meeting minutes.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or changes? I ask for a vote to approve.
Aye.
The last meeting minutes I'm asking the board to make a motion to approve are the Thursday, April 11th Board of Director meeting minutes.
That was the audit.
Correct.
I move to accept.
Second? Okay, any changes? Vote to approve? And that's all the minutes? Okay. Well, the next is the President's report. And I'm going to adhere to my 3-minute rule. I just want to tell you, I think the days have flown by since our last meeting held in March. And I stand back and I want to look in admiration at how my colleagues in the community have rallied to the cause making Sandoval better. The task was awesome, but by taking a step at a time, I think we're moving forward. I'm pleased. Firstly, I want to express my appreciation to all who helped make the Easter extravaganza such a tremendous success. Tireless hours by many, too many to name, volunteers created a festive atmosphere for families and children alike. And our new lifestyle director, Libby Szymanski, completed her first major event with flying colors. Appreciation needs to also go to Gary Dobus, who set the stage for success for her, and the entire Pope team who came from Sarasota. And last but not least are the Sandoval volunteers, who are really the key to our community. Our property management staff continues to get organized on many fronts, and first by understanding the issue and systematically implementing their new policies. Most notably, the Pine Island Gate is fully operational, and for once, something in Sandoval exceeded the projected opening date by 9 days. The Trafalgar Gate has been redesignated as a residents-only entrance. And this change was implemented as the city of Cape Coral became aware of safety concerns involving the traffic circle. And if we had not voluntarily taken corrective action, they would have done so by direction. And they were here today to check us out to see if we did. They were here on site 5 minutes and left. And unfortunately, I have to say, we only lasted 3 days before our first gate strike at Pine Island. It happened this morning. A tractor trailer tailgated someone in the residence gate, ran on the grass, you know. It wasn't a resident. As many have noticed and commented on, the pothole situation on Sandoval Parkway had become unacceptable. This issue, whether residents realize it or not, has been at the top of the list of issues with Taylor Morrison for several weeks. Behind the scenes, we've been working to get this corrected. And on Tuesday, we had another meeting was held on site with Keith Norton and Carl Seneca. I think you remember, some of you folks know Carl. Carl was working for Pope and came and did the violations. They personally pledged to fix the issue. I sent them an email last night and said there's any way they could do this so I could have a positive report for the board meeting tonight. I got an immediate response back, and they said they'd be here at 8 o'clock. This morning they arrived and placed coal patch in all the potholes, supervised by Al Roper. And I want to acknowledge their positive desire to resolve the issue, and I express on the part of all of the Sandoval residents a hearty thank you. Tonight we will be formalizing our committee appointments and membership. I'm excited to see many new faces on the list of volunteers. Volunteer work is sometimes taken for granted, but believe me when I say every hour is appreciated by all. It's the truth. Volunteers were assigned to only one committee, even if they applied for several. This policy gives all residents a chance to participate. This does not mean that if you are not picked for a committee that they can't utilize your talents of a non-committee member. And they might be called upon by the committee for their expertise, and I hope that everybody would look upon that as an opportunity that maybe you didn't volunteer with the committee, but you have something you could contribute to them. Let them know. All ideas are good, you know. We don't solve problems unless we get a lot of input, so I encourage that. So more details about the business at hand will be seen as we continue, but our meeting's going to be lengthy, so I'm going to be quiet.
You did it.
Next one is the treasurer's
Treasurers.
report.
I don't know if I can keep you 3 minutes longer than that. I'll try. The December 31st, 2018 audit report was presented to us at our last meeting in draft form. And Tony Gregory has finalized that, submitted it to us, and it is a done deal now. The adjusting journal entries have been sent to us. I think Jeff has input them into April, So our April financial statements will reflect our beginning January 1 balance matching our ending December 31st balance, which right now they don't do. But that will take care of that. Everything will be fine on that. The March 31 financials, I thought we were going to have them on everyone's seat here.
Beginning next month, we will have them on
Okay.
everyone's seat.
I was going to kind of go through it and explain some of the things on the balance sheet, what those are, but I'll wait to do that next month when people have it in front of them.
I apologize.
When will it be up on the website?
Yes, it's already on the website.
It's already on the website, so people can go on the website and see it if they want it. But the balance sheet shows a $268,000 balance in the fund balance for reserves, and it shows $1,873,218 in reserves, and that's fundamentally a form error. There should never be a fund balance in reserves. And Jeff and I talked about that, and he is talking to Tony Gregory about doing a journal entry to combining those. He thinks maybe it was an adjusting entry 5 years ago, because he's never seen that number change. It's always just stayed right there. So we're going to get that fixed so that it at least reads correctly. Several items in the March monthly financial statements and the 3/31 annual financial statements are above their budgeted amounts right now. We will be monitoring those to make sure that we come in at the right numbers, and if we are spending more than what we budgeted, we'll have to adjust the budget to reflect that. And just know that we can't adjust the revenues without adjusting assessments or taking money out of the telecommunications surplus fund to fund that. So any adjustments to budgets that we make will be just shifting stuff within the expenses and taking it away from one area, putting in something we've already spent, so that it's not going to cost any more money to do that. But we need to have everything be online, not be spending 150% of some line item. Our 2019 budget is based on revenues we expect to collect from homeowners assessments in 2019, and any budget adjustments will just be shifting dollars. One audit recommendation that we had was to examine our cash balances and take steps to protect ourselves from uninsured deposits. And the Finance Committee will be looking at doing that through some kind of sweep arrangements where BB&T takes all the money out of the account at night, spreads it to other banks, so if anything happens overnight, we got insurance, and they come back to be used again the next morning. So we'll look at doing that. The board needs to do a resolution authorizing me, Jerry, and Jeff Moore to be the authorized contacts with BB&T for an account we have called the Cube account. Nobody really knew what that was. I talked to Jeff about it. Apparently, when we started selling the stickers to get gate access, somebody thought, well, we need to take credit cards to do that. So they got the little square, and rather than go through Jeff and Pope, somebody went to a local BB&T branch and opened another account. And the monies that we swipe credit cards for anything now goes to that account, and it's called the Cube account. And right now, nobody has access to that. So it's like the Roach Motel. The money goes in, but nothing ever comes out. So and I think BB&T probably won't talk to any of us because it's a local account and it's not one of our regular accounts. So I think that's why we'll need the board resolution, but we need to find out what we need to have in that resolution.
Have it written up.
Okay.
Right, proper format.
Let's see. Automation of accounts payable. We talked to Jeff. David, Dave, how do you pronounce your name? Siganic. And I went up yesterday and spent the whole afternoon, 3 or 4 hours with Jeff Moore, talking about accounting in general, processes that are in place, policies that are in place, the system that we have. And they have a pretty good system, but they are looking to do a major upgrade, and they're doing demos right now. They expect to have a decision made within a couple of months, and implementation may take 6 more months. But at that point in time, everything will be online. Jerry can look at an invoice online, click to approve it because he signed in and they know that's who approved it. I can look at it, click to approve it, so we won't be shifting papers back and forth and duplicating things and triplicating things. But that's going to be 6 to 8 months down the road before that's available. So Jeff is working right now on a workflow process for us to streamline our system, to get the issues out. He's coming down May the 1st to meet part of the Pope Town Hall meeting that we're going to have here at 6. Jeff is going to be here at least an hour early to meet with the Finance Committee, and we'll continue that discussion with the Finance Committee to try to iron out and get payables on an even keel. Part of the reason that we have to do this is if you've looked at the past financial statements, or if you look at the current one, you'll see that we've got deposits of over $8,000. That's Lee County Electric has made us place money in deposit with them because we paid our bills so late that they don't trust us. So we have our money in a non-interest bearing account at Lee County Electric because of the way we pay our bills. We had an account at Lowe's. Lowe's closed that account because we paid our bills so late. We've been paying interest and we've been paying late fees to our credit cards because we're so late getting payment to our credit card companies. And it's not that anybody's doing anything wrong, it's just the system is convoluted enough that by the time all the pieces of paper get collected and approved and sent from here to Sarasota and a check's cut and mailed, that it's just not working. So that's what Jeff is working on. We're going to try to figure a way to eliminate all this stuff going forward. Construction in process account on the balance sheet has been scheduled out. Actually, Jeff's been scheduling it out all along. We need to give that to the board to review. I can print it up and get it to everybody. Once we've done that, we need to get it to the ad hoc Clubhouse expansion committee to look at what's been paid, who it's been paid to, look at the work product that we may or may not have from the professionals that we paid for, to see if any of that is of any use or any value to us at all. It may not be, but we need to make that decision. The reserve fund cash flow schedule is also available for review by the board. And the last thing is the telecommunications surplus fund schedule has been prepared by Jeff. It's been prepared by Jeff since we started. As a resident, I just didn't know that was even there, but it has been. And we can get that ready for the, printed out for the board to review and have any questions for Jeff that we might have. Currently in the telecommunications surplus fund, we have a current, we had $1,664,061 at 12/31 after the audit adjustments. $189,995 has been contributed in January, February, and March. $22,804 has been drawn out in that period, so we currently have a balance in there of $1,831,252. That's it. Was that 3 minutes?
That'll do it. Thank you very much. The general manager's report.
So I have several items to report on. The first came up last board meeting. It was relating to someone had a concern about the Phase 3 drainage issues. I'd just like to report Jim Swigert is going to actually handle that in his report a little bit later in the meeting. And then for Mr. Higgs, who last meeting requested board members to come to the pool, one board member each Friday. Our board president, Don Wells, attended the first one. And Al Roper. And there was about a dozen folks out there, and the anticipation was for a little bit larger crowd. So the board, through email, has consents to engaging once a month rather than once a week, and we feel as a group that's appropriate. Gate strike protocol, I know everybody has seen Trafalgar Gate, and I don't know if everybody knows, but a U.S. mail vehicle hit the gate, and it was clearly negligent. And our operations manager, Mark Boyer, has been in contact with them and their insurance adjuster, and they are agreeing at this point to take care of the damages. So a new gate will be installed. Mark's given an update in just a moment, but I believe he's going to tell you a new gate's going to be installed tomorrow, and then maybe drop arm, the operator, correct. I'm sorry, I'm not talking about the iron gate. I'm talking about the operator and the barrier arm. And we're looking for installation tomorrow that may spill over into early next week. Lifestyle manager, I think at the last meeting, someone brought up the concept of a committee for lifestyle activities. I think that's a wonderful idea. In fact, this is the first community I've been at where there hasn't been a committee. And I know there's tons of volunteers, so that committee would probably pull from those guys. But the main reason for having that is not necessarily the help, because we have so many volunteers that help. It's great here, but more for ideas and to infuse a little bit new ideas and new activities and whatnot. So Libby's new. I think everybody knows that. She's doing a great job. She is such a hard worker, and she's smart, and want to let her get her feet on the ground. So probably go through about 3 or 4 months until she feels comfortable, and then at that time, we'll probably solicit some interest in a social committee. Pine Island Gate, I know everybody's really pleased it's open. There is a little glitch, and some of you, quite a few people probably know about it, and we have signage there that basically says stop at the first white line, and then after the gate opens, proceed slowly towards the gate. What it should have said is, if a vehicle is in front of you, stop at the white line. So everybody here and everybody listening online, if there's not someone already at the gate, go ahead and proceed closely. When you get about 3 or 4 feet from the gate, it'll open up and you'll see it. So to help solve that problem, today the communications committee videoed me and some of our volunteers, and really we pointed out that and a few other helpful tips to access and egress all of our gates, not just Pine Island Gate. That video is due to be e-blasted out tomorrow, and I haven't seen it yet, but I'm told it's great work, and I think you guys will agree. We have some very professional videographers and photographers and editors, and I think you guys will see a little bit of that work when that comes out tomorrow. So thank you to the Communications Committee. Potholes have been talked about. Wanted to mention our association's attorney, Rob Caves, who I think a lot of you have met or seen at our annual meetings. He will be here at the next board meeting on May 23rd, and he's going to give a presentation to the community on electronic voting. Because I think, as everybody knows, there's a little bit of due diligence communities need to do, especially for the first time they're rolling it out. So we want to be on time, and thanks to Ron Spooner for bringing that to my attention last month. And we would have had him here this month. It's just that our schedule is so tight tonight, and we feel that we still have time to have him here next month and still have plenty of time to roll that out if the board so chooses for the next annual meeting. The other thing that Scott brought up at the last board meeting that I would point out is going to be on May 23rd as well, is I've committed to a recommendation to the board on electronic vehicles, which I think everybody knows. I think the most prevalent one you might call a golf cart, but I know everybody loves attorneys, and through first glance at an attorney opinion we had, it was pointed out that legally a golf cart isn't just what everybody would perceive a golf cart to be, but it actually has to have room to place your bags on the back to be a golf cart. Otherwise, it's an electric vehicle. And our deed restrictions talk to golf carts. Not many people drive a golf cart in the community because we don't have a golf course. So that's just one issue, but then it goes on all the way to the electric scooters, the electric motorbikes, the electric little cars kids are driving, and where they can drive them, where they can't drive them. So it's not quite as easy as just saying, yes, we want golf carts, no, we don't want golf carts. It really goes a lot deeper. And so again, next board meeting, I'll have a lot of that delineated out and be able to make a pretty good presentation to the board and have them consider a direction that we want to go. I think that's what that recommendation is going to do for you. And then based on that direction, I see at the next board meeting, we will vote on a policy. And that's all I had from my updates, and I would like Mark to give a short update on his projects that he's overseeing.
There's just a few of them that I've been tasked with. The first one is the Verdmont wall repair with the hole that happened from last Halloween. Right now, I'm currently in the process of obtaining accredited fence companies to come in and provide me with proposals for the necessary repairs. Oops, sorry about that. Just your normal fence companies that do chain link and wood and vinyl do not do that. So it's been tasked to, and you know, fortunately I have a lot of good connections, so I have had some good companies contact me. I'm projecting that to have everything done, proposed and everything, I would think by like the 10th of May. That's what I'm projecting it at. And then also just to segue into another task that I was with the fence for the perimeter fence, the chain link fence around the property. There's a lot of holes, a lot of damage. You know, we're gonna have companies come in and look at that and propose for repairs and all the necessary things that our maintenance man cannot do. And then, like Jerry was saying, Envera is installing what's called the MAC system. That's at the entry at the Veterans Gate, and that is gonna be installed on Friday.
Trafalgar Gate, correct?
Trafalgar, sorry, my apologies. And I'm not sure if, because when I first came in, there was confusion. We have two different kinds of gate systems. We have a lift master, and we have a MAC system. The MAC systems are at the entry at Veterans and Trafalgar, and we used to have the lift master entry at the New Pine Island Gate. Now, the MAC systems, what they have is it's fitted automatically, so when anyone strikes the gate, I immediately get emails, and whoever's on that will get an email letting us know that someone struck the gate, what time it is. Then usually within 24 hours, we get reports with video, all the information on who struck the gate, which is how we can follow up on it. So, again, that's gonna be installed on Friday. And then, you know, the gentleman, Steve from Bose, you know, they do our gates. They're gonna be installing next week, because again, the arms at Pine Island, the lift masters do not have that. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna come in and they're gonna install electricals. So the gate, they're basically called gate strike sensors. So they will be fitted for that. So right now, if anyone hits the gate, we don't know about it unless someone tells us. So hopefully by Monday or Tuesday, maybe Wednesday the latest, they will be on there. So it'll be the same system as that. We'll be notified immediately, and we'll have footage and everything. Also, the pool amenities, there's a warranty issues out there with the rusting and the paint and the chipping. I met with Trey and Chris from Infinite Aqua and Mike, who is the Sherwin-Williams district manager, because they had conferred with him prior to this project, you know, with paint and everything and the elements, and they assured him that it was fine, and obviously it's not. So they looked over the damages sustained on all the said amenities and said they would be in touch. I've been in touch following them, and I finally got results. I spoke with Chris from Infinite Aqua, and he provided me with the update that the matter has been taken out of the district manager level and brought up to their corporate. So they're gonna be doing a little more investigation. And he's gonna keep me up to date with that next week. And last one I have is I've also been tasked with obtaining for the dog parks for chairs and storage units for that. And I am currently researching which chairs and storage units are the best for the community. And I probably should have a final decision by next week. And then I'll just get a total cost and submit for approval. And I'm projecting that to be done by the first week of May. Not to have them, but to have it proposed and looked at and move forward.
I don't mean to add anything on your list, but one thing, the parking at the dog park.
Yes, I did have that on there, but there hasn't been any discussion about that, so I didn't have any.
Okay, we will meet early next week with Don and Al.
Okay.
And get started on that project.
Okay, yeah, that was one I just didn't.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mark, if I could just ask a quick question, if I may?
Please.
Two, actually. The MAC system that's not on the Pine Island gate, I guess that wasn't spec'd when TM was building that? So are we paying for that?
Yeah, so if you don't mind me answering. So that was a big discussion that we've had with Taylor Morrison, and they pulled out all of the contracts that were executed, and unfortunately, the upgrade was not part of that. I think the obvious is if the developer put it on the gates while they were here, why wouldn't they put it on this gate? You know, but it's not there. We're still probably in the 558. I would hope that we would still seek some compensation for that, but we're not gonna get it up front.
Do we know our out-of-pocket cost for that?
About $600, $700, I think is what that is.
Okay. And lastly, I know, because I spoke with many residents when we were talking about, Al had brought up the last meeting about benches at the dog parks, and I went to both of them and spoke to dozens of residents, and they were kind of like, well, some said we'll take them, some said we like our chairs. How did we progress from that now to storage shed with chairs? Who?
I would say I probably took the lead on that, and that was through conversations with the folks that were here, and Al had some conversations. He actually went out to the dog park, and we felt that based on the fact that the benches were hard to move and they wanted the mobility, so we thought, well, let's get some chairs. But right now it was kind of ratty because everybody brings their own personal, probably their older chairs, and they're all different. So we thought, well, why don't we just give them what they want and give them some chairs, but all the same, and then we would really like a storage spot for them. And so that's kind of how that rolled out. But it's a lot less cost prohibitive. So I don't want to say trial period, but at least for a short-term period, a year or so, if that works, then bingo, we've got it. We can perhaps put it in the budget each year to replenish 1, 2, or 3 chairs, whatever.
And storage sheds aren't approved?
Storage shed might be a little heavy. What I had in mind was a storage container.
Yes.
Like a box, or something like this.
Yes.
And we're still looking into the storage capabilities, but it won't be a structure.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, the lake aeration presentation's already been done, and so we're now moving on to the committee reports. And the first committee would be the Ad Hoc Clubhouse Expansive Committee Report.
It's always wonderful when you can see a project completed and you can say, look at all the new signs, or look, the gate is here. Unfortunately, all the work that the Ad Hoc Expansion Committee is doing is all the behind-scenes things that have to be done. The primary board members of this ad hoc committee have been extremely busy over the past month. During the first week of our existence, we made numerous attempts to reach the architect, only to discover that he was out of the country on vacation. The day of his return, Ron Spooner and Molly Knotts drove to his place of business and to his home to attempt to set up a future meeting with him, which was a successful approach, resulting in our first hour-long meeting that very day, where we received the blueprints for the expanded clubhouse building. 2 visits to his office the following week were required to obtain the first set of blueprints for the current clubhouse building, and then for a thumb drive PDF on both projects. Over the following week, we analyzed the resumes of 21 candidates who submitted applications to be part of the Ad Hoc Expansion Committee. Since our first and most pressing need was for individuals with hard engineering, architecture, and construction backgrounds, we started interviews with candidates possessing those requirements and then started to work down from there. We chose 5 individuals with hard skills to form the main core of the committee: Joe Beach, Steve Cassens, Rick Devine, Aaron Morrison, and Greg Willett. While we still have a few more candidates to interview, we feel strongly that we will be able to utilize most everyone who applied in subcommittees that will be formed as certain skill sets are needed. We were most fortunate to have so many talented applicants to choose from. Secretary Molly Knott spent several hours constructing the charter for the committee, with input from lawyer Ron Spooner and review from our 3rd member of the group, Marilyn Stout. The primary board members of the committee, along with GM Jerry Evans, met with architect Greg Gernsdorf on Thursday, April 11th. Later that evening, during the board audit meeting, the charter for the Ad Hoc Expansion Committee was approved by the full board, and the committee members of engineers and construction experts were also approved. Getting up to speed is a labor-intensive proposition, but one that this committee, with the assistance of our 5 engineers and construction experts, is up for. The first formal meeting of experts was held on Sunday, April 14th. The next meeting will be held on Sunday, April 28th. Value engineering is at the forefront of each expert's mind. Value engineering requires a multitude of hours evaluating each area of construction against the bids, and then finding more efficient and cost-saving actions that will produce a more meaningful way in which to construct the clubhouse and renovate the current building into a fitness/wellness center. On Thursday, April 18th, the committee board members visited sites built by those asked to submit bids. Well over 100 man-hours has been spent over the past month.
Any board members have any questions for the Clubhouse Expansion Committee? Okay, we'll move on to the Amenities Committee report.
Good evening. My name is Rob Purcell, Chairman of the Amenities Committee. I think the board members have all received the packet of the information that I supplied. Excuse me while I read this so I don't miss a point. I'm only going to read the first 2 pages. So, the committee has been asked by the pickleball community to look at ways to provide more and better courts for their use. Every year, there are more and more individuals interested in playing. Most nights, the courts are full or better. In season, there is pickleball scheduled 8 different times during the week, with pickup games played at other times. When they offer lessons and clinics, it is well attended. They have been receiving inquiries from prospective new residents as to the status of pickleball in Sandoval. If you ask some of the realtors, they know that it's what they're looking for in a lot of places. So they're looking for communities that have good facilities. The committee has extensively researched the options for building pickleballs, other than in new sites. And there was 5 prospective sites, space in the North Dog Park, space at Calypso Park, the soccer field behind the clubhouse, adjacent to the pool on the side, and adjacent to the tennis courts on the north end towards the road. But the issues with these areas include the cost of over $100,000 to create 4 new pickleball courts. That does not include excavation. Some of the sites would not take much excavation, other sites would take a lot. Other than near the clubhouse, there's no bathroom facilities at any of the locations, and some of them probably don't have electricity, and there's a need for lighting because a lot of the pickleball takes place in the evening. Due to the high cost of building new pickleball courts, we believe that the most effective time when the community has several other high-cost projects on the docket, new clubhouse, aeration, so on and so forth. This proposal that I present is only slightly higher than regular resurfacing of the current courts. And according to several articles by the tennis community, tennis courts should be resurfaced every 4 to 8 years to maintain their integrity and to take care of cracks and low spots. I believe our courts have never been done, and I've submitted an article that covers it.
Then they were pressure washed. I believe they were done, and then a few years ago they were pressure washed, which shouldn't have been done.
Yeah, because
really damaged them.
Yeah, because I've had tennis court people out here getting some of these prices, and he said they should never been done with a rotary thing. There's a specific way to clean the pickleball or tennis courts. Anyway, my proposal, or our proposal, is to resurface 1 tennis court to create 4 regulation pickleball courts. This would include permanent nets and take down the existing tennis court net in that 1 court. That's Exhibit 1 of the diagrams I presented. Resurface another tennis court next to the same one as dual pickleball courts and tennis court, meaning there would be the regular tennis court stripes on it and coloring. And then there'd be 2 sets of lines on either side of the tennis court net that would allow, if you set up temporary pickleball nets, and that would create 2 more pickleball courts. So you would end up with 6 total pickleball courts. Then resurface the remaining 2 tennis courts as strictly tennis courts. Take the pickleball lines off and resurface them just with the proper just tennis lines. The current configuration of the 4 courts, I said, is in Exhibit 3, which shows the tennis lines and the pickleball lines over top of each other. It could be done, over a 2-year period for expense reasons or whatever. As I said, my handout shows that to create the 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court is approximately $7,500. To create the 2 temporary ones and resurface the tennis court is about $6,200, and then to resurface just the 2 tennis courts together as strictly tennis courts is about $11,000. These are not hard estimates, but they're pretty close because I've had more sports that does this. They build, create, surface, all this stuff out, and they've given me approximate estimates. So that's basically what I have to present. If somebody else has any other questions, we haven't been doing much else right now, but.
I've got a couple questions, if you don't mind. First off, thank you for the detailed report. It was really helpful. Obviously, you guys spent a lot of time on this. And it's something that I've heard lingering in the past, some issues from the tennis side, from the pickleball side, but the point is this is our home and we really want to make sure it meets everybody's needs, so I think this is important and I appreciate you bringing it up. I had one question regarding the green area south of the tennis courts. Has there been any evaluation of how many pickleball courts you could fit there?
To the north side, you mean?
Well, it's okay, on the north side.
On the north side, next to the road. You could get 4 in there.
That's
It's south,
actually
but
facing
it's
south.
offensive.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. It's south. Okay. Yes, you can get 4 pickleball courts in there. You would have to move the esplanade almost to the road and excavate that mound. In other words, there's a big mound there. There's a lot of it would take a lot of excavation. Let's put it that way. It would be a good site because it's here. It has facilities. The electric's right there. There's a big main electric box next to it, so that you don't have any problem with getting lights for electricity for lights and stuff like that.
Okay. I'm just asking, considering the possibility of putting in 4 pickleball courts there, what about making one of the tennis courts a flex space where you would actually set up 4 pickleball courts, but if there was a need, transition it back on a temporary basis back? That would allow you 8 courts, 3 straight tennis, and then 1 flex. Is that a possible option?
I don't know. I'd have to, it's to put 4 pickleball courts on I'm sure you could do it. And in other words, you would just have to take the tennis lines off. It's just going to be too many lines to do it. But yes, you can do it. You can do with, with temporary nets that come up and come down. You just put them in a storage box. If you want to go take a look, Cape Royal, they've done that to their 2 tennis courts. Actually, there's only 1 tennis court that has tennis lines on it anymore.
Okay.
The rest of them, they do pickleball. They do it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings. They did it in the wintertime. I assume they probably still do. But you could go over there and see the lines that, how you put 2 pickleball courts on an old tennis court, that one on either side of the tennis net. But you possibly could do, I think you could probably do 4, which would then create, like you said, like 8 pickleball courts if you created new ones. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering my question.
I think most tennis players that are serious tennis players like tennis courts with no other lines.
Right.
Yep.
That's why having the 2 on the north side being totally tennis, I think, is a very appealing thing.
Yeah, that's what I figured, because like you said, that they don't particularly like the lines, although they're there now, they've been using them, but, yeah.
Marilyn was next.
Yes, I thought I would share what the city's doing, you know, with the $60 million bond that was passed last November. The part of the plan is to put pickleball courts by Lake Kennedy, and I heard that they're going to have 6 pickleball courts, and I heard a price of $300,000. So consequently, your price is a whole lot better. However, I would also share that one probably will have restrooms and more to it.
Probably, yeah, because
Yeah.
mine was basically, the $100,000 is basically, there's a flat piece of ground, and you can build 4 pickleball courts. I mean, that's what the guys from More Sports told me. But then you've got excavation, lighting, all that other stuff that adds
Which
to it.
probably adds up to the maybe 300,000, and of course, it's
Well, with
government doing it.
with bathrooms and stuff, yeah, so,
They're also putting tennis courts at that same area, so should
Yep.
be quite a facility.
yep.
I believe that the way our docs read, that we would have to have a vote of the of the community to be able to change an amenity, because it is an amenity now designated as tennis courts. This was discussed about a year and a half ago. I think legally we need to look into that, and that may be another, the legal committee may need to take that upon them to find out if that really is the case. If it is not, it would be a much easier fix to be able to divide it at least equally between tennis and pickleball. I understand that I agree that it's a very fast-growing sport and that a lot of people want to play it. And sharing our space would be the most advantageous thing to do. The other piece of this, and if I remember correctly, when the sites for doing the reconstruction of this building and adding a new clubhouse, during those site evaluations, it was taken into consideration that additional pickleball courts in a few years at that south end was
Okay.
discussed. So that may be something that our committee, the ad hoc expansion committee, could look into for you to see if that was part of the drawings originally.
Okay.
Couple questions, I'm sorry, I didn't know you.
I'm done.
Couple questions, and again, I thank you and your committee for the work that you've done. This is very enlightening. I don't play tennis or pickleball, so for me, this was something that I could really digest and get my head around. But some of the questions that I did have, again, and this is strictly not a tennis versus pickleball, this is a board member trying to solicit for the greater good, because that's what we're supposed to do here. Do you know offhand how many regular pickleball players participate, or that you would have in your, let's just say, club, if you will?
Well, in the evenings when they're full with 4 courts, 4 people, that's 16 people. And then usually in the wintertime, there's more. They just have to sit out till they go in rotation. So there might be
I've
16.
seen 25.
Yeah, well, there's probably more than that active pickleball players. They just come at different times and things. So, I mean, I've got they went through and had a bunch of people that were interested in it sign a petition, and there's about 40 names on it.
50, I think.
So we could say
would cover.
4 dozen, maybe, let's just say.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, what would be your group participation for tennis?
From what I've seen, there's probably 20.
Okay, so
I'd agree.
2 dozen. So probably 50% more, or 100% more, excuse me, in pickleball versus tennis.
Correct.
Okay, super. I would strongly.
That's in season.
Correct, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
On a season, it's
Probably
probably
drops
less
off.
than half of that.
The
Oh,
other
yeah,
thing I would
right.
take in consideration, I don't know if that 20 is including the dozen or so kids that play it to tennis as well.
Right.
So we're
Right.
probably looking at
And I think there's other people that play pickleball that aren't in the club.
probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can drive by it in the middle of the day when there's
Yeah.
not normal schedule, and there's 4 people out there playing
Yeah, I was just
pickleball.
trying to get just
Yeah.
a taste of usage. But I would, and again, until we hear it from a legal aspect, I would kind of echo Molly's comment here, because just because, you know, our $500 a month electric bill for that fountain, I would pull the plug on that tomorrow. But we've heard that it's an amenity, it's been here, and it can't be removed. And I would echo, until a lawyer tells me that tennis courts were here before pickleball, they are an amenity, we cannot reduce the amount, I would take into consideration what we have here. But until I get a formal opinion, I think again with Molly, let's get something in writing where we're not shooting from the hip, and able to give you a go forward or a pump the brakes kind of deal, which to me would make sense.
Scott, I actually do have a legal opinion that I've obtained from the previous management or board, and I'll share that with the full board tomorrow or next week.
Okay.
Yep.
And lastly, as I'm sure if you guys are avid pickleballers or whomever, you know the back and forth, if you will, that's going on in Punta Gorda with noise abatement,
noise.
Right.
lawsuit with somebody who allegedly had a stroke or whatever. So I think as we're going forward, you know, I live on Stony Hill, and not that it bothers me, but just I can hear the pickleball when they're playing. So again, I'm sure there are people, I hopefully will, you know, at least see that people are using the amenity. That's a great thing. So maybe have to go into sound barriers, additional costs, all those things that maybe on the surface don't come to light, but really need to be looked into. So I think that Punta Gorda is really going to be a sounding board for even as the city goes on as to,
That's right.
you know, pickleball. And I'm sure if something does happen where, you know, pickleball gets a stake driven through it, somebody's going to probably come up with a quieter ball or paddle or whatever's making the noise
Somebody will
that
make
people
a
don't
fortune to
like.
come up with a quiet pickleball. You're right.
Right. So
or,
maybe
or the racket. So
exactly. But again, those are things too. Once we start, you know, having to erect sound barriers, if that's the case through litigation, if, you know, people don't like the noise, something as a board we need to consider too. That.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I have been given some information on people that supply sound abatement. I haven't looked into it, but I have somebody who's given me information and a company to talk to. I've talked to other ones that say that people have tried it, doesn't work too well. I don't know whether it's what the situation is, but.
I'd probably agree, because we spend millions of dollars on highways with walls for sound abatement,
still hear
and they don't work. So.
Right. So, and you know, you live on Stony Hill, I live on Wynwood, and I can hear it too. But it's not annoying. And the other thing is pickleball up here has been pickleball up here ever since they started playing pickleball. So most of the neighbors are used to the noise. You know, you put it at one of the dog parks or down at Calypso Park across from the condos, then you'll have a big stink probably from the noise.
Right, especially.
I have a comment I'd like to make. I was sure that it was pickleball noise when I was walking on the Esplanade, and when I got up to the courts, it were tennis players. So,
anyway.
And I think the city's plan is to put them next to the animal shelter that's being built.
No boy.
That's abatement.
Oh, well.
Rob, thank you very much. I know that you and your group have spent a lot of time on this, and I think I can speak for the other board members. We're not trying to shelve your idea. We just have to look at everything.
I understand now.
And thank you for bringing it to our attention.
We, you know, just try to come up with the most cost-effective, you know, one with the situation with, you know, the clubhouse going on and all that other stuff. So, anyway, so thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Let's give him a hand. The ARC committee report.
Good evening, I'm Carol Turriello. On March 28th, Jerry asked me if I would fill in, because at the moment I'm a committee of one, and we didn't want to hold up, you know, any of the applications in progress. So between March 28th and today, I reviewed 31 applications. requested additional information from 11 and received it from 10. Everybody's been really very cooperative, which brings it to an approval rate of 28. Projects have been approved, and I did 14 on-site inspections of completed work so that people can get their deposits back. I just have 2 remaining files that I need to go over with Jerry because it's above my pay grade, the questions that the people are asking. But I've really enjoyed this time, and I look forward to being part of a full committee.
You've done a great job.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
Hey, another hand. Communications Committee.
Good evening. I'm Doug Willett. I'm the head of the Communications Committee, and we are far from a committee of one. In fact, we put out an appeal for volunteers. We had 6 last year, and we had 3 drop off during the course of the year. But we put out an appeal for volunteers in late March, early April, and we now have 19 members of the committee. It is an amazing thing. We're going to have a core, a 6 or 7 person executive committee that will be voted on by the board tonight. But in addition to that, we've been able to recruit, and really it wasn't the recruitment as much as the volunteering step forward, an additional 13 people. And the talent range within these people is absolutely incredible. We have a gentleman who was a full-time newspaper editor and sports columnist for 40 years. We have 2 project managers who spent over 35 to 40 years working in corporations on major project coordination. We have a new photographer. We have 2 or 3 new photographers, but one of them spent 40 years with Walt Disney, taking pictures for Walt Disney. And you've already seen some of his work on Facebook pages. A gentleman by the name of Harold Fowler, and he was here earlier tonight. I don't know if he's still here. Oh, he's right here. He's got an incredible amount of talent, and we're really looking forward to him helping all of us who do the photography get better at it. In addition to that, we've added 2 graphic designers who have full-time careers as graphic designers. So we're looking to use them, obviously, to help pump up the look on our materials, on our publications, and on our website, and on our video work, and so forth. We've picked up a social media person from a local TV station who some in the room might know, a very talented young lady, and she is going to help us to coordinate our social media work, and I'll mention about that in a minute. And it just goes on and on. The challenge we have now is to make use of all the talent that we have, and that's a nice challenge to have. So I'm really gratified at the reaction and really excited about the possibility. To speak of which, let me talk a little bit about what I think we can accomplish with all that talent. We very much plan to continue with the work we've been doing to date. Specifically, we are working very, very closely with the new board and with the new general manager on their communications. We are getting involved in probably 5 or 6 communication pieces every week. So every one of those general manager update that you see, every one of the ones that comes from the board, every release that's coming from the Lakes Committee or the other committees are all flowing through our committee, and we are helping with the writing, we're helping with the editing, and we're helping with the actual posting onto the website itself. So we plan to stay very active in that area, and we are gratified that we have the opportunity to do that. In addition, the work on the website continues. I know there's an occasional comment about how awkward it is to find anything on the website. But I have to tell you, if you go look at it, and in fact, Denise here, who is our head of our website crew, tells me that the data that's coming back from Pope is that the use of our website far exceeds anything they have seen in all the various properties that they manage. So we are putting information out there. There's an enormous amount of work that Jim Niehaus has done on the lakeside and the rest of his crew. A lot of work coming in from our new landscape chairman. We're excited to partner with her, and we certainly would welcome additional work with the amenities team and the other various teams. The third thing, well, that's the third thing, the communications for the committees. But the new talent and the new influx of talent allows us to have bigger ideas. One, we plan to greatly expand our photography for use across all of our delivery systems. With Dean, with Howard, Harold, and the other 2 or 3 other photographers we've added, we have a total of 5 photographers now. We hope we can enhance the various releases that we put out and the things we're doing. We do want to introduce, we keep saying this, I've been saying it for a year now, we want to introduce a newsletter. The problem we have is a software problem. We got plenty of talent to produce it. What we don't have right now is a coherent piece of software to produce it on. So the Club Essentials that we have under contract does not have the capability we need, and we are having a struggle to come together and choose the software. And what I hope to do is put one of those project managers on the task to pull it together and ram the thing home for us to get it done. But I know Ken and I are both very anxious to get that into the population. One of the exciting things about Libby coming on board is that she's very open to using software in her communications on the lifestyle side. And there is enormous amounts of possibility of doing things, but not that Gary and everyone else weren't terrific talents, but when it came to using the electronic means to enhance the publications, it left something to be desired. So we need to work with her on a number of things, including the appearance of some of the materials, and also some of the other issues around things like electronic enrollment to signing up for things and things of that nature. There's a lot of possibilities there. Obviously, that's not our decision, that's the lifestyle's decision. One of the most exciting things for me is that we have now the capability of producing videos and on a fairly regular basis. Two of the people we added were people who, during a recent campaign, were posting videos about the various candidates, and we're doing some very creative things. And one of those people is Brandon Sullivan. If you remember, about a week ago, the week before the Easter egg hunt, there was a video posted that was a promotion for the hunt. And it was a very cute, short video, but it was terrific. And it got a lot of comment, a lot of enthusiasm, and so forth. That was Brendan's work. And he did that out of the blue. He did it. We asked him to go do it. He went off, did it, sent it to us, and it was terrific. So today, Brendan was involved in doing a video with Jerry. And as Jerry mentioned earlier, we're going to produce that tomorrow. And it has the tips on the gates, how to actually get through the gate without using choice language. Hopefully we'll make some progress there. But we're gonna try and really increase the number of videos we do. We did the little video promo with Don in terms of advertising this meeting tonight. We hope to do that every month with a different board member doing the invitation. And we're also talking with Jerry about the possibility of following up these meetings with a general manager recap on what happened at the meeting, the highlights and so forth. So we're looking to do that with Jerry tomorrow. We're also going to be very involved with the resident handbook and other things that tools that are for our residents, a new resident orientation, resident handbook. Those are areas that really need some attention, and we have a good group of people who we think can produce some quality work there. And we would combine that with our photographers and our graphics people. Hopefully we can produce something that is memorable. And right now our resident handbook, I don't believe has been revived in 8, 9, 10 years. And much of it is outdated. And so I think that'll be a real benefit to the community. A couple more things. We are in the process of, in addition to all the people I mentioned, we ended up with 2 very talented typists, people who spent their career in data entry. And so we're in the middle of retyping many of our documents so that they're searchable. Right now, if you go to those documents and you need to find a particular piece of information, you've got to read through the whole thing. We're now producing those documents in a Word format so that you can put in a keyword search and find what you need immediately. And I know Jerry's very excited about that because I keep getting emails coming back saying, oh God, that's great, I'll use that myself. So we're happy about that. The other thing we want to do there is many of our documents are what I call developer-centric, and they're not HOA-centric. In other words, they were written by Bonita Bay, they're written by Taylor Morrison, and they reflect a developer's viewpoint. A lot of that is no longer relevant given the fact that we are no longer have major development going on here. And so we need to update those things to get them in line. A couple more things. I'm going to, my committee and I will be encouraging the board to reconsider the decision that the board made last November or October to ban the board from being, or the board and its committees from being involved in social media. We believe that was the wrong decision at the time. We continue to believe that. And so we will be coming back to you, excuse me. We'll be coming back with a proposal that will allow us to make use of those different media. And then finally, I want to mention, 2 things I want to mention finally. You just had the discussion of how many pickleball players do we have? How many tennis players do we have? I'm not asking for a show of hands. All I'm pointing out is we don't know. We're guessing, okay? We don't have any demographic information on this community whatsoever. It's embarrassing. We don't know how many old people are here, retired people. We don't know how many families. Well, Mike is here. We know he's old. We don't know how many families are here. We don't know how many families are here. We don't know how many kids are here. We don't know how many grandkids want to take part in the Easter egg hunt. We don't know what the kids want to do for recreational activities and so forth. There is an enormous need to gather some data on this community and some demographic information. And I think we have the opportunity to do that by conducting, in conjunction with obviously the board and management, but conducting some surveys and getting some information so that we can do the kind of planning, and the board and a lifestyle director and so forth can do the kind of planning they want to do. And then finally, very important that we recognize that Sandoval does not own its own logo and its own brand. Our brand is owned by Bonita Bay, and Bonita Bay is unwilling to sell it to us, and as my understanding, has been in the past unwilling to turn it over to us or sell it. As a result, anybody can come in and use the brand, use the name, use the logo, use the look and the color and so forth, without any ability for us to control that. And I believe that's a major issue facing us, not certainly on the level of the Clubhouse expansion, but something that we really ought to pay attention to. And so what I'm proposing is that during the course of this year, that we take a good hard look at this issue and come back to the board with some recommendations about how to proceed with it. So having said that, we've got lots of work to do. I fully expect this board is going to generate a lot of work with the stuff that you guys are taking on. And so we're positioning ourselves to be ready to help you in any way we can. And we fully intend to be ready when you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug, I want to thank you for a really invigorating report, and I would like Jim Niehaus to give Doug the trophy for the longest report. Okay, let's moving on. Let's move on to covenants.
I'm Mike Goldberg, head of the Covenants Committee, and it's unfortunate that I have to follow that presentation. But you do what you have to do. Now, I met with Jerry a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the committee, and we talked about the volunteers that went on and some of the policies and procedures. And that's about the extent of what the committee's been involved with lately. We've been pretty much inactive for obvious reasons with the changes in management and that sort of thing. But the community should know that I understand that things are moving forward quickly, and I think there's going to be some change that they'll see fairly soon. Interesting thing about this committee, Doug talked about all the things they've got to do and how busy they're going to be. It would be nice if this committee didn't have to do anything. If Jerry pointed out problems and violations, if the community would take it upon themselves to correct it, we wouldn't have to do anything, and I think that would be just great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
We got the shortest one.
Finance Committee.
Well, thank you, everyone. My name's Dave Saganek, and I have the pleasure of being the finance chair. And I'm glad to be second behind that long presentation. That was a wonderful presentation, very revealing. The report that I submitted is in the format that is probably very familiar to the board because I followed the board's agenda. And I think going forward, this is going to be very important to the Finance Committee that we be approaching finances from a very structured approach. So I'll read some of this into the record here and see if we have questions. So we actually have a pledge to the flag, which we were able to find the flag, Jerry, so we weren't able to do that. Then we called to order and, of course, established a quorum, and everyone was present. And I had some indication that there may be some people not being able to make it, but I sent enough emails out, and I think there's enough interest that the members of this committee are really earnest to get down to business, okay? We have a highly qualified group, I have to tell you. I've never seen the experience and the level of competence in a board, in a committee such as this. We have investment people. We have management people from a financial standpoint. We have accountants. We have bookkeepers. We have people that have been on exchanges that know investments. This is incredible. I carry some experience on the investment planning process and senior management banking level. So everyone was eager. In fact, we even had a member take the draft audit, which was distributed, and did a little analysis, which I think you see in your packet, makes a lot of sense in terms of simplifying the numbers and the reports that the community sees. So what I did was, to get to know the strengths of the committee, I asked for committee introductions. So we went around the table and we basically said who we are, what our strengths are, what we expect to do, and what the vision is of this committee. And the consensus was we want to take 2 steps forward and no steps backwards, okay? We want to be forward thinking, but we also want to look to the past and see if there's been any things that we could improve and also overcome any risks that we see to the financial operations of the HOA. We were able to identify some of those risks. All right, the next thing that we did, oh, I want to report that, I got to put my glasses on. Committee was very reluctant to have a secretary at the first meeting, so we're going to take care of that in terms of minutes. So what I did was I asked for email responses back from all the members, which you'll see in this packet, some post-committee remarks, okay? So out of the 8 members present, I received 6. Pretty good percentage, okay? And Bill wasn't able to make that. He's with the 9th member because he had some jury duty. Out of the 8 members that are active on this community, we do have the pleasure of having 3 past members, so we can get a perspective of what's gone on in the past and maybe use that going forward to leverage an improvement if needed. The meeting schedule, we feel we need to have a posted meeting schedule, and we're able to fit in, thank you, Jerry, the 3rd Thursday of each month, which was the old board meeting. And of course, there's some issues with that because we would like to see financial reports before our meeting as well as you want to, and that's why you went to the 4th Thursday of the month. So maybe in a course of work on this committee and working with Pope Management, I'll talk a little bit about the visit that Bill Tubb and I had the other day. We think we can improve the reporting process possibly from Pope to us. We would also like to make it very clear that we would like residents to attend. And we're going to have an opportunity for residents to speak at the meeting based on what we're discussing or some topics that they may want to bring up. In fact, I've heard a lot about projects today, and I've heard a lot about, well, I like this, I like that, what's the cost? And I communicated an email to Jerry on a possible, and we think we want to surface this through finance, a possible process to surface projects and have somewhat of a completed project before the board, including some feasibility in terms of cost, feasibility in terms of surveying residents, feasibility in terms of some of the questions that were asked, so that you have a more complete view in the time that you have to evaluate a project going forward. And we expect, if you ask finance, how does this fit into the budget? How does it affect the budget? How does it affect reserves? We can supply an answer to that, okay? So I think that's going to be important that we take a process and define it going forward. Okay, we didn't have any past minutes. I asked for past agendas to finance and minutes, and apparently I can't find any, and I asked Jerry to find that. So we're kind of functioning. This is it. This is our initial thing going forward. So I wanted to make a splash on this first report. So we all have a charter, okay? And the charter probably is something that we need to live with and we need to focus on almost as much as maybe our Constitution. So the charter was passed around that Jerry worked on. We've done some revisions. I believe in the packet tonight, we have a charter that we feel in the Finance Committee we can work with. One of the important things about the charter, and I'd like to give it a little advance notice, Jerry, is the purpose of the charter sets out what type of committee this is, okay? Remember, we're not elected officials, we're appointed, okay? We're empowered to work for the board and the community. So the purpose is the Finance Committee will review, analyze, and make recommendations to the board of directors as appropriate for the following. And we've listed out 11 different categories that we can review, analyze, and make recommendations. And we feel we have the competence, the experience, the skill level, and the commitment from these committee members to deliver a good job. So balance sheets, operating statements, normally all these kinds of reports that we puzzle and like what's going on. Also, we found, and we'll talk about a little more about assisting this concept of account payables, we find that that's a sore issue immediately and needs attention. We included the reserve study, the audit tax returns, assistance to the manager on a draft budget, investment accounts. We need to have an investment policy statement, for instance. How do we want to have these large amounts of money just sitting in bank accounts? Do we want them in variable type accounts? What type of assets? There's an entire process to develop an investment policy statement. And I have a lot of experience with that personally, and we have another member, Lisowski, who also has a knot. We can add tremendous amount between the two of us, probably somewhere about 50 to 70 years experience. I'm not sure. Lee, I know mine. I have about a 40. So we also feel that we need to work as subcommittees. We need to work where skills are to have subcommittee projects that may be devoted entirely to, let's say, the account payable process or the operating fund, or maybe the investment policy statement, so that we're not linear on this, that we can work on a multitude of things and report to them, set time limits, set tasks, get things done. The qualifications are fine, but I also thought with Jerry, thank you, that the committee chairperson of any committee should carry a certain amount of duty and responsibility. So it's not me up here, there's a certain amount of that, but the chairperson should have some duties that may include things like this. Set the agenda for each meeting, okay? The agenda that you see before you is an agenda that I set, okay? You'll see various agendas from different committee people. It all tends to what is the character of that particular committee going forward. Notify members of meetings. I probably have 50 emails in the 1 to 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks we've been in existence, okay? Constant communication, noticing of members so we know what's going on. The chairperson needs to lead the committee meetings. We need to have a protocol that the chairperson calls, just as we have here at the board. There's a protocol that's recognized. I use this in the business I have, which is actually leads to some fraud work. I'm an expert witness in federal and in court cases. Attorneys use a central lockbox. We use a lockbox for documents that we're working on. This is not in lieu of any HOA type of records, but it's a particular lockbox. If we say we're going to do a draft report on something, we put it in one location. We don't have to sift through a lot of emails, and it's efficient work. Plus, we can catalog every time that lockbox is accessed by whatever member, and I can maybe help someone along and say, did you look at this, and we need your opinion on this, and coax people along so we have an efficient workflow. Okay, so that's a little bit about the charter. And I want to also talk about, we had one question come up with the charter, obviously from one member, and he's done some good work for the committee in the past. And Don asked, what does it mean about assist with account payable as needed for the general manager? I once again recognize, oh, wait a minute, this word assist, are you doing the work? Are you managing the work? What is the policy? So we spent some time, Bill and I, when we went up to Sarasota, to say just what is our process for account payables, okay? We'll talk more about that. So the committee was also unanimously supportive of understanding more about this current payables process. In other words, how bills are received and paid. Now, I have to say that I'm coming in this with a very clear mind. From the meeting of the 18th till now, I think I have a pretty good understanding of our current state of account payables. I may miss a couple of details here and there, but I think I can report to this committee what condition that's in. Well, it's a top priority that the members, when looked at the audit and the balance sheet, and they asked, what is this utility deposit? Bill mentioned it in the treasurer's report. When you look at the audit, you look at the balance sheet, there's stares right out, 8125, I believe the number is, of a utility deposit. Where did that come from? That was a natural inclination that we got as questions from members. And what it was just as Bill said, this is a required additional deposit from LCEC for either late payments. I can't conceive of an accounting system or a payables processing system, account payable system that yields this type of result, okay? It's just, it can't be, okay? So we looked into that, and that was one of the topics that we talked about when we went up to our May 1st meeting. And I probably, since I'm on a committee, everybody's wondering what the heck went on. What we want from Pope, who is our paid management, and from the manager, is we want a defined process for account payables. We want to know that that process is going to work whether I'm out, Jerry's out. But we want someone to own that process because we owned an error of the extra utility deposit on the balance sheet. And there's been other occurring, as Bill noted, some late payments and penalties. We just can't go on like that because that is something which disrupts our entire financial process. Just think of having $81,000 or $8,000 set aside when someone wants a project here that may cost much less than that, and it would improve the condition of the community. So that's something we really wanted to attend to. So the other thing was, it seems if we're going to work as a committee that, you know, these financial reports and statements are rather active. There's something going on every day in our financial condition. For us to get a package of reports, analyze and report over a month later to the board, I mean, it just doesn't seem like there should be improvement on that. So we hope that'll happen. We don't think it's a systematic type of breakdown. We think we have systems in place. We think that our current vendor, Pope, could provide some systematic help to us, okay? For one reason or another in the past, maybe that just didn't happen. So let's go down to the draft audit. And the first area of concern was that utility deposit, okay? And we identified it specifically as an additional deposit. The second thing was, and I asked the members, what is a fund? What is a cash balance? Listen to some of these names that you see in some of these reports. We have an operating fund. We have an operating cash. What is it? We have reserves. We have a replacement fund. We have a CenturyLink fund. We have a telecommunications surplus. If you ask any of the residents here to try to figure out that balance sheet with these different names and they peer into some of the other accounts, they're going to see inconsistencies in nomenclature. So one of the things that Bill and I said when we met up at Sarasota, we would like to separate out the CenturyLink fund, and let's call it a fund. Let's take the operating fund and call it a fund, because that's what the gentleman in front of us was calling these. He said, well, we need to set up our vendors so we have another fund. Okay, so let's call them funds. Operating fund, CenturyLink fund, and replacement or reserve funds, whatever you want to call it. But these are the different categories. And when you break that out, you may get a different perspective as to how some of these numbers look. Okay, so we want to make it simple and understandable. Now, we have a sample for that. Fortunately, I think it's on the website. Some people say it's not on the website. But in your packet, this was a sample taking the same numbers off the draft audit, separating out a designated fund called the CenturyLink funds, and we keep that, I think, is really what the board wants to look at this particular point in time while we're evaluating conditions going forward, our financial conditions, while we're evaluating what, if any, to what amount we can, you know, talk about an expansion. To the financial committee, we're looking at it as dollars, okay? So you talk about expansion of a particular clubhouse, we're going to say it's $1.6 million, $1.9 million, $3 million. We're going to try to fit these numbers in to see if they work. Because if you don't do that, it's seemingly to me first, then you may have a wish list that turns out to be unaffordable. And you may expend money on a venture that may not be recoverable. I heard tonight that we may have we may have some funds expended that may not be useful in terms of plans and in terms of things that were expended for a particular fund. So we'd like to kind of have the board think, and if you have any suggestions to us, please give it to us, but give us the task to say, we want to see if our financials under our current HOAs, or if there should be an increase in HOAs or an assessment of HOAs, what $2 million fits into the financials and how it works, or $3 million or $5 million, okay? And let's tie it to that, and we can maybe give some I want to call hypotheticals. We can do some forecasting. That's typically what's called financial planning. We're planning out in terms of a scenario going forward. Then we can identify some inherent risks, some assumptions, whether or not we're willing to take on those risks, willing to take on added costs. It just makes sense from a planning standpoint. Well, I already mentioned make it easier for the community to understand where the money is located. And I think this is not a hard thing because we're not talking about expending any money. We're just talking about renaming things and putting it in a category where everybody can understand. How am I doing time? Am I
Oh,
going on
you-
over?
You have lost half your audience.
All right. Well, I could stop at any time.
Yeah.
All right. If there are any questions related, is that okay with the board do you want me to keep going or not? The report is on the website. There are some email addresses there. You can contact any board member as to what we were talking about, and we welcome suggestions. So please come out to the meeting. We would certainly love to have you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next committee will be the Landscape Committee.
Did we re-award the,
Yeah, that's right. We're going to move that trophy over to the Finance Club. Sorry, Doug. You only had it a short period of time.
I'll work on it.
Okay.
Oh, no, I think we need to go the other direction.
Hello. Your Landscape Committee has been working very hard on identifying and documenting various areas of concern and is in the process of working with Crawford Landscape to rectify these individual situations. We've had several meetings with the owners and managers, and there's some more important meetings coming up this next week, and we're looking for some good things to result from that. A little heads up, spring is the time when we do our hard cuts on some of our plants, and people sometimes get a little concerned when they see these big, beautiful plants all of a sudden turn into little sticks about this tall with no leaves. We do that for the health of the plant because down here we grow every day. You know what I mean? So if you don't have sunlight, you don't have leaves. So you have to cut that all off so that it forces nice bushy leaves at the bottom again. So in a short amount of time, just a matter of weeks, they're going to look very full and beautiful. Late last summer, I implemented a new technique that I believe very strongly in, where we do rejuvenative pruning. Instead of going through and doing just hard cuts straight across the board with plants, I prefer taking the big older wood out and leaving some of that nice new young growth. So it does bush out from the bottom, but in a more eye-appealing way to you in the meantime. And I think it's a little bit healthier for the plants, and then you don't lose your flowers and everything all at once. But that will be occurring within the next month or so. You'll be seeing that on different species, some more than others. In the webpage, we're going to start including different areas that I think you're going to find very helpful. And one of them that you'll be able to link to is some videos, and I'm going to grab that Brendan guy for that. I was going to do all these individual pictures, and I'm thinking how I'm going to keep it all online. And when we just had that presentation a couple people ago, I'm going, yes, I want that guy. So it'll be really quick and easy for you to see how to take care of those maybe hibiscus bushes in your own yard and different things like that for you, taking care of your things as well. There'll be pages in the webpage or links in the webpage that explain why we do what we do on the commons areas. Most importantly, links to the new list of plants that are suggested for you and the new list of plants that we highly recommend you please stop planting. Examples, areca palms and the Mexican petunias, which are an invasive species, by the way. And I know you see some of that in your common areas. I see arecas and Mexican petunias all over the commons, but we're working on that. The committee is working on that. But I think it's very beneficial to you, and on the web page, on those link pages, it's going to go into all the detail, so I won't do that now, of why we're making those suggestions, and you can use your best judgment for yourself then. I want to thank Vic from the Communications Committee. Went and got some cords for me so I can do presentations to the owners of companies and our new big committee. So that's going to be really beneficial to us. Thanks, Vic. Irrigation work on Florida Evergreen homes began this past week. Round of applause. Homeowners can expect to see those irrigation flags begin to dwindle in number very soon. And your things green up. Lastly, I'm excited to be welcoming 7 new and in some cases returning members to our 2019 Landscape Committee. Really excited about that. Get some help. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Here.
Allison, you had some questions about the budget and.
Budget?
And Bill is the guy that you need to.
Oh, I have questions.
You have questions.
I do.
He should be able to tell you how much you spent.
Not me. I haven't spent yet.
Well, somebody spent, so you'll know how much is left over. Talk with him, please.
I'd like to start spending, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
Lakes Committee?
Keep it short. Oh, sorry.
Jim, you've got a real challenge here.
I realize the pressure's on, and most of which is coming from my bladder at this point. So, you know, maybe I could just open it up to questions if you guys have. The report was sent out earlier this week and posted. You know, I can give you the topics. We had our monthly meeting in conjunction with the inspection. We have a bit there on beneficial shoreline plant survey. I got some information from Alexis today. I didn't want to put her on the spot earlier because I hadn't had a chance to look at it. We had some correspondence on the feeding of wildlife policy. We also we had an incident on Casaberia. It was pretty well documented. Some fertilizer was spread in a manner that it should not have been. We got updates on the water quality monitoring programs, as well as a recommendation for an informational brochure kiosks that we can put in place here in the lobby to kind of help spread the good word of things that we can do. Some of which are already sitting up there, so that's where I got the idea. There's a few that have already been put up there, but we'd like to have something a little more organized. And it was brought to my attention by one of the committee members of some training that residents could attend through Crow, because we have had, you know, we know that wildlife lives here, and we've had and can sustain injuries on occasion. So, you know, we might want to consider, you know, having a group of residents that could be a bit of a response team when those things come up. And some of the difficulties we face being a designated as a gated community, we don't always have the luxury of official groups coming in and helping us out. We're kind of on our own in some respects. So I'll just open it up to questions, because I really got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. I think we're going to give him the trophy back.
That's right.
Thanks, Jim.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the 2018 audit, and I know we had a special meeting where the audit was provided to the board of directors, and so tonight we're looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? I see no discussion. Let's move to approve the audit in its final form. All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Next item.
Next item of business is the board code of ethics and conflict of interest policy. And I think it's worth reading for the general public, if you guys don't mind. And I'm not going to go over the legal items that bind this document, but I'll start with the code of ethics, which is all board members will. 1, ensure that Sandoval is well maintained, financially secure, and operating in the best interests of the members of the association. 2, focus their efforts on the goals of the association and not their personal goals. 3, refrain from using their service on the board for their personal advantage or for the advantage of their financial friends or associates. Next, respect and support the majority decisions of the board. Next, keep all confidential board information confidential. Next, approach all board issues with an open mind, prepared to make the best decisions for everyone involved. Next, do nothing to violate the trust of those who elected or appointed them to serve on the board. Next, never exercise authority as a board member except when acting in a board meeting or is delegated by the board or its president. And last, follow the bylaws and covenants of the association and other policies of the association, including but not limited to this conflict of interest policy and procedure. And then the conflict of interest policy and procedure, the purpose of this policy is to protect the association's interest when it is entering into a transaction of arrangement that might benefit the private interest of a director of the association or might result in a possible excess benefit transaction. This policy applies to any member of the board of directors, whether they're an officer or a director at large. Conflicts involving financial interest. A conflict of interest shall be deemed to exist when any director knowingly has, directly or indirectly through business, investment, or family, A, an ownership, investment, income, or other interest in any entity which the association has a transaction agreement, and B, a compensation agreement with Sandoval Community Association or any entity or individual with which the association has or is contemplating a transaction arrangement. Compensation includes direct and indirect remuneration, as well as gifts or favors that are not insubstantial. Anything with a value of $25 or more shall be considered substantial. Conflicts involving significant relationships. A conflict of interest shall be deemed to exist when any director has a significant relationship with a nonprofit or for-profit entity that has or is negotiating a transaction with the association. This definition shall include, but not be limited to, sitting on the board of a nonprofit or having a leadership role or other significant role in the operations of a for-profit or nonprofit, even if there is no compensation. Conflicts involving benefit to property. A conflict of interest shall be deemed to exist when a director's property will be disproportionately benefited from a board decision relative to other members of the association. A conflict of interest shall be deemed non-existent when any director or their property value will benefit from a board decision in a manner that is consistent relative to other members of the association. Procedures. Conflict of interest disclosure form beginning April 26th, which is tomorrow. All current directors and newly elected or appointed directors will sign a conflict of interest disclosure form prior to voting on any members put before the board. The form may be found at the end of this document. This form shall be updated by the director as needed and will be effective for the director's entire term. 2, duty to disclose. In connection with any conflict of interest, the interested director must disclose the existence of the interest to the other members of the board prior to or at the beginning of any discussion involving the conflict of interest. 3, recusal of self. Any director with a conflict or potential conflict of interest shall abstain from voting on any matter that involves their interest and shall give the other members of the board an opportunity to discuss the matter without the presence of the interested party. 4, violations of this policy. If any board member or other member of the association has reasonable cause to believe that a director has failed to disclose conflict of interest, that individual shall notify the board of directors either verbally at a meeting of the board or in writing outlining the basis for such belief. B, the board shall give the director in question an opportunity to explain the alleged failure to disclose. And last, C, the board may then take any of the following actions as reasonable steps to correct the violations, which shall be determined by majority vote. And there's 4. 1, suspend the director's voting privileges for specific related matters, or 2, require the director to leave the room for the duration of the consideration of and action on related matters, or 3, reprimand the director and in egregious cases, remove the director from the board, or 4, determine that no conflict of interest exists. Lastly, 5, documentation. Board minutes will reflect the disclosure of conflicts of interest and potential conflicts of interest, as well as any action outlined under Section 4 of these procedures. I'm not going to go over the disclosure form. Everybody has a copy of it. So at this point, I'll be looking for a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and second the Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest Disclosure Form. Is there discussion?
I'd just like to thank Jerry for putting this together. This has been on my radar since I moved into this community, and it's refreshing to see that now board members, committee members, everyone will be held accountable for their actions, especially to the residents, because that's who we work for, and it's refreshing to see, and thank you for your efforts.
You're welcome.
I think that we need clarification as to how deep this will go as to committee members or just the board.
The next item on the agenda is committee ethics guidelines and conflict of interest policy.
Okay. All right.
Let's read.
Pay attention. All right. Okay, so are there any other discussion? Well, I had two. Okay, then let's call for a vote on the Code of Ethics and Conflict of Interest Disclosure Form for Sandoval. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is the committee ethics guidelines and conflicts of interest policy, and it is essentially the same policy tweaked for committees. So I'll search for a motion.
I so move.
Second.
Discussion for the committee ethics guidelines and conflict of interest policy. I see no discussion. I call a motion to approve. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That also carries.
Next item of business is a procurement policy, and I did have Bill Tubb and Dave Saganic review this. Dave reviewed it as well, yes. And so we're in unison on this policy. I'm not going to read the entire policy. It's 10 pages. All these things that the board is approving will be posted to the website in the documents section, so you can view them there. But I will just point out the 12 or 13 topics that this covers. General purposes, reserve funds, pre-authorization requirements, expense approvals, collections, agreements, contracts, and legal documents, corporate borrowing, investing, and financing, execution of documents, approval of accounting journal entries, check signing authority, credit cards, and board of director responsibilities. And I know the board has had an opportunity to review this. They've had their pack for the past week, so we'll be looking for a motion to approve the procurement policy.
Do I see a motion? We need to make a motion, then you can discuss. Second?
Second.
Discussion.
On item number 3, expense approvals, number A, 3I, provision for association credit cards, note finance finance debit cards are not permitted. You've got minimum approval for general manager and committee. I think
Show
that's
me
a
what page number at the bottom?
3.
3.
338.
I've got it. I'll take off committee.
Okay.
General manager.
Great.
That's going to be. Okay,
Well,
so we will
should it
make
be
an amendment to
Page
the.
General
3 and
manager
where?
and president, maybe?
I think for credit card general manager, you guys, the finance committee will see those through the AP process, and they'll also see them in the monthly
I would
financials.
think general manager and treasurer, if you want to add to some.
Or treasurer, perhaps. I think it would be.
I think that would be more appropriate than president.
Okay.
Instead of, I
So
guess,
there's a
what
backup.
I'm worried about the word and. I don't mind or. And the reason I say is the staff uses credit cards on a daily basis, and I would hate
Well,
for.
if you needed a backup, I think it'd be more appropriate the treasurer would.
Okay, so we'll change the word and to or, and then we'll add treasurer. So general manager or treasurer. And these are, you know what, I don't think we need to do that, because if you look, these are minimal approvals. So anybody above the general manager will be the or. So it would be in line with the treasurer or the board president. So I think we can leave it as general manager as the minimal approval person. Okay?
I concur. Makes sense.
Okay, thank you. So no changes to that.
Other than remove committee.
Rather than
Striking committee.
Oh, striking committee. Thank
committee.
you. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Then we will recommend a vote to approve as amended the Sandoval procurement policy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The procurement policy is approved.
Next item of business is ad hoc committees, and the first one are Sunshade. I have a memo that I wrote to the board that I'll read. It says, announcements were made soliciting volunteers for committees at the March 21st, 2019 Board of Directors meeting, as well as via general manager update on April 2nd. Unfortunately, only 2 residents, Rick Devine and Todd Wynn, provided their interest to serve on the Sunshade Committee. Ad hoc committee, as a result, I recommend the board to hold off appointing members to this committee until further solicitations are made and more residents came forward. And I will say, before the board considers that, Todd Wynn did contact me, and he had some people that were interested as well, and was really excited and anxious to get this on the board agenda so this project could move forward. Decision was made, though, to hold off a little bit more because we wanted to let the entire community know that we were short and give everybody a chance to reconsider. But anybody that applied from your solicitation will be recommended to the board for acceptance on that committee.
I sent you an email last night from Alicia Kaufman.
I got it.
Did you see that?
Yes.
So,
So I'm not looking for a motion necessarily. I'm looking for a board consensus.
I'll chime in
Thank
since
you.
I'm the board liaison for the Sunshade Committee. We already had some people give their committee chairs give their reports, and they were a committee of one, and they're running. And I think it would behoove us, since it's March, by the time we do another, it's April, by the time we do another advertising, we're well into the summer months. I would say to the board, my position is going to be, we have two people who are interested. I don't want them to lose their interest. I want them to hit the ground running. We will work together as a committee of 3 or whatever it may be to add those committees. I say we seat the committee tonight and let's get rolling so our children have possibly sunshades by the heat of the summer.
I would like to say that Rick Devine is on another committee, and he could be a liaison to the committee, but he can't be a member.
Let me offer another solution, maybe a compromise. The resolicitation actually went out yesterday, so perhaps we can put a deadline on that for a week, perhaps, and then maybe anybody that provides an application, we can run that through the board through unanimous consent in lieu of a meeting, and then to get them on it seated, and then at the next board meeting we affirm that unanimous consent in lieu of a meeting. That'll get things moving.
why not go ahead and seat the members we have?
It looks like we have
continue
3
with the
at a minimum.
solicitation, and at the
Rick
next meeting
Devine.
we can add to that.
Okay. Board's desire. Yeah.
It looks like we have at least 3 members right now, and you got to ask yourself whether you're not going to move forward if no one else volunteers. This is a very focused project, and it seems like we've got 3 volunteers here. And
I'm really disappointed in the community because this is something that has just been, talked about and in social media meetings, and was a very hot item, and then with little participation. I can't understand it.
Well, I do have confidence in Mr. Nguyen, the other 2 people who have shown interest, the Kaufmans, I believe, and myself, that we can get this thing going in a timely fashion. And again,
You're on this too, by the way.
I don't see my name on
No,
this.
no. This sunshade was Tub and D. Philippus.
Okay.
Well, that's 4.
I'm good with that.
You'll have to go back and look at the minutes.
It is.
He's trying to get out of work.
So Scott, if you want to, at some point entertain a motion to that.
I mean, I don't want to make this any more difficult than it has to be, but again, this again was, as most people will know, this was one of my driving things too, were sunshades, and to put it off until we're into July and August, and we're still doing RFPs and things like that, I think time is of the essence. So I'm going to entertain, or I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we do seat the committee of Todd Nguyen, myself, Mr. Tubb, and Alicia Kaufman, and
as a start.
As a start. And again, if we want to solicit more people or however you want to do that, add to. But I think for this, there's probably already some legwork that's been done. I don't want to speak, but there's probably some legwork that's been done that we can probably bring this to a conclusion with some RFPs in a timely fashion.
I think the amenities committee has a folder of information that I shared with Ron.
Yes, actually, we
that,
did Lisa did some work also.
And so I think that you maybe coordinate with Ron to grab that information.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Well, I'd second the motion.
Well, can I ask you to change the motion, because we've actually already appointed the 2 board members as on that committee.
The board members are already on the
So what
committee.
I would recommend is the board make a motion to appoint Rick Devine, Todd Nguyen.
No, Rick Devine's not on.
Cannot have
excuse me,
Rick Devine.
excuse me, Todd Nguyen and Alicia Kaufman.
You can certainly have Rick Devine attend your meetings, but as an invitee, but he's not a committee member since our policy is 1. I'm not
Is that a
excluding
motion
him,
okay?
but
That's a motion.
you're more than welcome to do
I
that.
second it.
Okay, hold on.
Any other discussion?
Slow down a second. I got to get this down right. So you would like to appoint Todd Wynn and whom?
Alicia Kaufman.
To the
COFF
Sunshade Ad
name.
Hoc Committee.
Yes.
And please understand that Rick Devine can be invited by you all.
Correct.
Second. We are needing a second? Did we?
No.
I'm sorry?
Ron
Very good.
seconded.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
so
further discussion?
Scott moved and Ron seconded.
No further discussion. I move to bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The Sunshade Committee has been seated.
Next item of business, I believe Molly already covered. It was the Clubhouse Expansion Ad Hoc Committee. I believe she covered in her report. There was no motion that was solicited on that item of business.
More interviews, I think, is that correct?
Correct.
More interviews are scheduled for Friday the 3rd.
Okay.
Next item of business, capital improvement projects, and we have a very similar situation. Announcements were made. I won't go over the exact memo. Same announcements were made. Unfortunately, 2 residents, Todd Frey and Linda Mahoney, provided their interest to serve on the Capital Projects Ad Hoc Committee, and the same recommendation is to hold off appointing members to the committee until further solicitations are made and more residents come forward.
I would suggest if you're seating one, seat the other one.
If that's a motion, I will second that.
Well, I can't make motion. You want to
That's
make
true, you
it?
can't. You can't.
Well, since-
I suggested
Okay.
it.
So
We got a motion.
I heard the motion from Marilyn as
Marilyn's making the motion.
as appointing Todd Frey and Linda Mooney to the Capital Projects Ad Hoc Committee. Is that correct? Thank you.
And
Okay, I will
who are
second.
the board liaisons to that committee?
Myself and.
The, Al and Scott. Okay, second, any
Hold-
discussion?
Slow down. I can only write so fast. So Marilyn moved and, okay, Scott seconded.
Okay,
Got it,
all right.
thank you.
No further discussion. I call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The Capital Improvement Projects Committee has been seated.
Next item of business is the Amenity Committee Charter, and I will not read the entire charter, but I will read the 5 bullet points for the purpose of the charter. One is to assess the amenity needs of the community through surveys and other means as needed. 2, to procure bids for amenity repairs and new amenity assets as needed. 3, to review, assess, and make recommendations to the GM and Board of Directors related to amenity rules and regulations. 4, create subcommittees as needed to carry out responsibilities that are streamlined to a specific narrow task. Creation of subcommittees shall be reported on a monthly as formed. However, subcommittees are not required to follow the same meeting protocols as full committees. And 6, to work on various assignments as needed and is determined by the general manager and board of the directors. And that's actually a 5 on the charter. I will amend it to remove the blank number 5.
Okay.
So I am seeking a motion for the board to approve the amenity
So
committee
moved.
charter.
Second.
Discussion on the charter, and the number on the committee is going to be?
Under composition, a total of 9 plus the chairperson.
Okay.
I did. Bill?
Okay, discussion? No discussion. I call the question. All in favor of approving the charter for the Amenities Committee, please signify by raising your hand.
Aye.
Those opposed? The charter for the Amenity Committee is approved.
Next item of business is amenity committee chairperson, board liaison, and member appointments. I recommend the board make a motion to reappoint Rob Purcell as the amenity committee chairperson, appoint Al Roper as board liaison, and appoint the following 5 residents as members of the committee: Tricia Guerrero, Doug Hofker, Joan Vermeer, Mike Wilson, and Kristen Wynn.
What happened to Craig Schneider? Did he withdraw?
No, one committee, and he's on the covenants.
Okay.
So I'm seeking that board motion.
I so move. Or Marilyn moves. I'll second.
Okay, Marilyn's motion, your second. Okay, discussion? All those in favor of seating these individuals as on the committee, please signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The board approves the seating of the membership for the Amenities Committee.
Next item of business is Covenants Committee Charter, and I'll only read the one. Their primary purpose is to hold resident hearings pursuant to Florida Chapter 720 related to deed restriction enforcements and fines. And I won't read the remainder of the charter, and I'm looking for a board motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the Covenants Committee Charter. Any discussion? No discussion. I call the question, and all those in favor of the Covenants Committee Charter signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The Covenants Committee Charter is approved.
Next item of business is the Covenants Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. Recommend the board make a motion to reappoint Mike Thalberg as the Covenants Committee Chairperson, appoint Don Wells as Board Liaison, and appoint the following 8 residents as members of the committee. And is actually, I'm recommending 9 residents. And the charter was changed to accommodate 9 members on the committee. Those 9 members are Ruth Scheiger, Paula Durr, Richard Edwards, Kathleen Falstini, Betty Fishborn, Charles Ponzo, Craig Snyder, Valerie Zaleski, and Michelle Eichholz. I'm so sorry if I've butchered those names.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Bill, second?
Second.
Al. Any discussion? All those in favor of the appointment of these individuals for the Covenants Committee signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The Covenants Committee has been seated.
Next item of business is ARC Committee, specifically to approve the charter. And I won't read the entire charter, but I will say the 3 primary responsibilities are meet twice a month or is needed to review and make rulings on ARC applications according to state legislation and community governing documents. 2, rulings shall consist of approvals, conditional approvals, and denials. Last, inspect when applicable, completed improvements to ensure conformity. Looking for a motion to approve the ARC charter.
I so move.
Okay,
I moved.
we have a motion and we have a second to
Second, Royce.
approve the Architectural Review Committee Charter. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The Architectural Review Committee Charter is approved.
Next item of business is to approve the ARC Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. Recommend the board make a motion to appoint Carol Torello as the ARC Committee Chairperson, appoint Molly Knotts as Board Liaison, and appoint the following 4 residents as members of the committee: Barbara Chanette, Bob Friedman, Grady Stevens, and Jen Tarsia.
So moved.
Okay, do we?
Second.
Second. Okay, a discussion? All in favor of seating these members on the ARC committee signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? We have seated the membership for the ARC committee. Carol, you've got some help now.
Next item of business is the Communications Committee, specifically to approve their charter. And while they do a lot of work, the 3 primary is analyze the communication needs of the community and make related recommendations to the general manager and board of directors. 2, carry out ongoing approved communications such as e-blast periodicals and videos. 3, video board of director meetings, member meetings, and other meetings of interest to the community. For a motion to approve the Communications Committee Charter.
I so move.
Second.
Marilyn.
Discussion? All those in favor of approving the Communications Committee Charter signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The motion carries, and the charter is approved.
Next item of business is the Communications Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. Recommend the board make a motion to reappoint Doug Willett as the Communications Committee Chairperson, appoint Don Wells as Board Liaison, and appoint the following 6 residents as members of the committee: Kathleen Conway, Ken Franklin, Rob Hunstein, Denise Nedfeld, Vic Nedfeld, and Lisa Spooner. And before the board makes a motion, I'd just like to reiterate what was said earlier. We have over 20 committee members that will be used as subcommittee members.
And those names should be recorded so that they would be covered by liability
That is correct.
insurance with the HOA. So we need to have those names provided for Jerry to make sure we know that. Do we have a motion?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of appointing these members as the primary committee members for the Communications Committees, please signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? The membership for the Communication Committee, primary committee has been approved and they are seated.
Next item of business, Finance Committee Charter, and I will note that the committee members have already been seated. Recommend the board make a motion approving the Finance Committee Charter as submitted, and Dave Saganic pretty much covered the charter in his report.
So moved.
Does he need to reread it?
Don't you dare.
Okay, do we
Bill
have a
moved.
motion to approve
So
the
moved.
Finance
Bill
Committee?
moved.
That's appropriate. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Discussion.
Huh?
Good discussion. Could I
Yes.
say that we did approve a charter last meeting? This is a revised charter
Thank you.
to put it consistent with the other charters, so it's not something that's totally different.
Then I think we need to make the motion that we have updated the Finance Committee charter and it will replace the charter that was approved at the last meeting.
So moved.
Revised charter.
Okay,
And
second?
Scott is a
I'll
second.
second that.
Okay, we've had the discussion. It's a revised charter, and all in favor of this revised charter, signify. Opposed? The Finance Committee charter has been revised and approved.
Next item of business, Landscape, which is Grounds Committee Charter. I recommend the board make a motion approving the charter and the primary responsibilities to analyze the biological and aesthetic condition of the community landscaping and to make related recommendations to the general manager and board of directors. 2, to procure proposals for landscape from landscape contractors as needed. 3, to oversee community landscape providers as a first-line point of contact for foremen and supervisors and ensuring best landscape practices are being met. And 4, lastly, to assist with landscape contract RFPs and bidding processes as needed. And there are other items that are consistent with all the other charters that I won't read out.
Okay?
I need a motion to approve that charter.
I so move gladly. That is a thankless job.
Second?
Second that?
Okay, discussion? No discussion. I move the call to the question, and all in favor of the Landscape Committee charter signify by raising your hand. Those opposed, the charter is approved.
Next item of business, Landscape Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. I recommend the board make a motion to appoint interim Chairperson Allison Johnson as the Landscape Committee Chairperson, Scott DeFilippis as Board Liaison, and appoint the following 7 residents as members of the committee: Lynn Berry, Linda Duclos, Edward Cosal, Babu Matthew, Beth Meehan, Dana Robbins, and Timothy Weiss. And I'm looking for a motion.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? Discussion? Scott looks like he has a discussion.
No.
No?
Do
Okay.
not.
Okay, all in favor of these folks for the Landscape Committee signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Then the motion is carried and the Landscape Committee has been seated.
Next item of business is Lakes Committee Charter. There are 3 primary purposes: analyze lake conditions from both a biological and aesthetic standpoint and make recommendations to the GM and board of directors accordingly, procure proposals as needed related to lake improvements, and work closely with lake contractors to ensure best practices are being adhered to. I'll look for a motion to approve the Lakes Committee Charter.
So moved.
Okay, second? Okay, all in favor of the Lakes Committee charter signify by raising your hand. Babu Matthews can't be on this.
Which one did?
Well, you've already put her on the landscape, on the grounds. That's why I was trying to tell you.
I need the board to make a motion to amend the motion for the Landscape Committee, and I don't know the best way to do this, let me think. It was basically what we have is a situation where Babu Matthew had applied for 2 committees, and where she actually is going to be placed on the Lakes Committee, not the Landscape Committee. So why don't we revise the motion of the landscape committee to include everyone except her, and I can make that, I can write that motion if everybody agrees to that.
So
Is
moved.
it an amended motion?
Yeah.
Thank you.
But we have to-
Second.
Who moved?
We're making a
I
motion
know,
to.
but who moved?
Babu Matthew?
No.
I moved.
Sorry.
Bill moved.
Yeah. Second? Discussion? Well, she's going to be on one committee, we're establishing our policy, so. Okay, so are all in favor of amending the membership of the Landscape Committee, Grounds Committee, signify by raising your hand.
Thank you.
Opposed? Okay, so amended.
Next order of business, Lakes Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. I recommend the board make a motion to reappoint Jim Niehaus as the Lakes Committee's Chairperson, appoint Scott DeFilippis as Board Liaison, and appoint the 3 residents as members of the committee, Babu Matthew, Eric Nicolai, and Steve Putnam. And before the board, of note, Jim Niehaus has plans to move from the community in the near future. Jim has agreed to carry on in his role, somewhat limited, while a potential replacement is identified and transitioned.
Okay, I have a motion.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
I would just like to say, I think what you had mentioned earlier too about one of the committees, as everyone knows, you know, lakes are dear to my heart too, and as sure many of you in the community are. And if you do have time at any level that you can devote, this task, believe me, takes more than 2 or 3 people to take care of. So if anyone could devote a few hours a month to lake sampling or working in the lab or any part, we would greatly appreciate it. This is a highly focused job. We will train you. Whatever you can avail yourselves to, please get in touch with Jerry and let him know that you want to participate in this. As we all know, fish kills and aeration and all those things are always on the radar, and without this committee, you know, basically the board and Jerry cannot handle that workload. So
And we have an aeration project going on, so you need double duty.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Next item of business.
No, we haven't voted.
We got to vote.
Excuse me.
Do we vote?
Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor of appointing these members to the Lakes Committee signify by raising your hand. As opposed, the Lakes Committee has been seated and approved.
Next item of business is the Projects Committee Charter. The primary purpose is to assist the General Manager and Board of Directors with community projects as needed and assigned. And I'm looking for the board to make a motion to approve the charter as submitted.
Marilyn?
Okay, we have a motion. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. Okay, the Sandoval Projects Committee Charter has been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I call the question. All in favor of the Projects Committee Charter signify by raising your hand. Those opposed, the charter has been approved.
Next item of business is the Projects Committee Chairperson, Board Liaison, and Member Appointments. I recommend the board make a motion to appoint Jim Swaggart as the Projects Committee Chairperson and appoint Al Roper as Board Liaison. And at this moment, Jim Swaggart will be the Chairperson and only member of the committee. So thank you, Jim.
He's hard to get along with. Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay, as a discussion.
Question, did we solicit members for this committee?
Yes.
And there was no response except for Jim, who's been carrying that role for years?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that particular committee, with Al's assistant and Don's assistant as board members, will be able to handle it with one. But we have opportunity up to a total of 3, including the chairperson, to be on there if we have any more interest come forward.
Can we ask you to
sorry,
continue to
additional
solicit
Absolutely.
for members?
Who moved?
I did.
No, you second. Who moved? I know Ron seconded. Who moved on this one? Who made the motion? Motion. Okay, thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, any other discussion? I call the question. All in favor of appointment for the special committee? Those opposed?
Next item of business is the Security Committee Charter. I recommend the board make a motion approving the Security Committee Charter as submitted, and their 2 primary responsibilities to continually assess post orders versus contractor performance to ensure best practices in the security needs of the community and common areas are met, and 2, to review video footage of gate strikes and other events as needed for the purposes of determining events that occurred and parties responsible for violation of rules and/or damages. And then again, there's more in here that the board has already read through. Looking for a motion to approve the Security Committee charter as submitted.
I so move.
Second?
Second?
Okay, the discussion on the Security Committee charter. I see no discussion. I call the question. All in favor of approving the Security Committee charter, please signify by raising your hand. Those opposed, the charter is approved.
Next item of business is the Security Committee chairperson, board liaison, and member appointments. I recommend the board make a motion to appoint Gary Cuddy as the Security Committee chairperson, appoint Marilyn Stout as board liaison, and appoint one resident as member of the committee, Robert Adams. And there is room for one more. It's a small committee like projects, so there is availability if someone in the future wants to volunteer, then we'll come back to the board and appoint that person.
So moved.
Okay.
I second.
Any discussion?
Does this committee have the authority to stand at the gate with a golf club and beat
No,
anybody that hits the
it's
gate?
not a golf club, it's a baseball bat.
I've thought about that.
Okay, all in favor of seating the Security Committee as listed? Opposed? The membership for the Security Committee has been seated.
That's it.
Next item of business is solicitation for additional agenda items, and I would remind board members that solicitation of additional agenda items for this meeting tonight. Can you hand me that list? Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
We almost were in a situation of having to open nominations for another board member this week because I almost ran over our president when I was passing him on his bicycle and we were in the intersection where that crosswalk sign in the middle of the road is. Okay. Is that where it is?
Right side, yeah.
I would like us to consider removing that because we've got crosswalk signs up now, and I think that's an obstruction to traffic.
Well, we moved the signs closer to the,
It was almost your death.
yeah.
He's insured.
Well, I had another driver went by me about 50 miles an hour and just floored the car to go around, same place. I mean, do we think that's a safety area, a situation? And if you need to do that, just make a motion and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, well, I'll move that we do that.
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
Okay, now let's discuss removing the sign at Brightside at the crosswalk. We have multiple crosswalks in the community. Do we need to remove that sign?
I think we need to go back and look before this new board was seated and the new GM was here. I was kind of privy to some of that information where they were removed initially because they were deemed a traffic hazard, if you will.
Delineators were. Yeah.
Correct, the sign in the middle of the road. And that sign was put back there before this new composition of the board and management because of concerns for, I believe, somebody on Brightside. And I'm not discounting that person's concerns, but point being is, again, consistency throughout what we do and say as we're going forward as a new board, not looking at the past. If you have one, we should either have them all or we should have none and rely on the crosswalk signs. I don't know what best practice is going to be. All I know is I'm a consistency person, and if you're going to have it for one, you can't give special dispensation to one neighborhood and neglect the other, so to speak. So
Hold 1 second, because I didn't get who moved and who seconded.
I moved.
Okay.
Moved.
And who was
second.
second?
And I second.
Scott second.
All right.
So
And
that's-
Scott, I'd like to weigh in on that, now that I have that piece of business taken care of. I agree that if it's good for one, it's good for all, or not good for one, or good for all. I think that we could use them on temporary occasions. I believe there were 2 purchased. 2 of those.
There's one in the closet there.
Yeah, so, and I think that was before Halloween, with the, knowing that we would have a whole lot of pedestrians in that area. I agree that it probably is a more of a hazard than it is an advantage. But I think we not do away with them, but reserve them for special occasions like Halloween.
I think that makes
Absolutely.
sense.
That was kind of a test case. Sean had bought these 2 signs, and he wanted to put them up somewhere close to the clubhouse to see how they were accepted. And that's basically what it is.
And I think there was some a rather lengthy discussion on social media regarding that sign. If anybody in the audience would like to comment on that.
There were some pros and some cons.
Yeah.
I would have less object.
There were quite a few children around that area, and it was...
Hold on. Wait a second. Lori, hold on a second.
There are quite a few children around that area, and it was deemed pretty dangerous for them when they were crossing the crosswalk at that spot, and that's why I believe that they picked Brightside as a testing point.
One more back. You got a microphone right there.
2 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to cut you off.
I'll take 15 seconds. I agree with Bill Tubba. That's been a road hazard. I've had to sway and cross lanes. You're attempting head-on collisions with cars, which is not only property damage, but severe damage. And I understand we've always had an issue with pedestrians crossing, but this is really something which it just seems out of the ordinary. That you're going to have to avoid this sign and cross over to another lane, and maybe even go over into the Esplanade. So that's my take on it. It's a road hazard.
I do think it should be reiterated that the pedestrians have the right of way in a crosswalk, and a reminder that we should be extremely careful when it comes to anyone walking through a crosswalk. I see that a lot, and I find it extremely frustrating and disrespectful that a car sees someone, anybody standing there, and they will literally speed up. It's not very neighborly, and I think it's something that we should collectively enforce.
I think the take from this issue is that we as a community need to learn to be patient. And we're not patient. We come up to the gates and we want the gate arm to go up. You know, if you'll just come up to the gate, wait till the arm goes down, next car, come up, gate goes up. We live in an impatient society, and unfortunately Sandoval is as guilty as the rest of us. And if we could just try to come up with a different mindset, I think it would be beneficial for all of us. Any other discussion?
I do have something like that I'd like to read into the record, and maybe it will dovetail into something else for upcoming months, or with one of the
We have to vote on
committees.
this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're just
You're
still
right. There's a
discussing
motion.
the sign.
You're right. I'm trying to.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's call the question. We want to remove the sign that's in Brightside, use it for special occasions.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we will so do that.
Live long and prosper now.
Thanks. It's not glued, it'll come right up.
Any other additional items, agenda items that a board member would like to put on tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Very good.
I received a email from a resident, and I'm going to read that into the record and then kind of give us everybody's going to know what it's all about. So anyway, to whom it may concern, my wife and I live on Greendale neighborhood, excuse me, on Woodburn Place. We moved here in 2017, and soon after our arrival, 2 beautiful oak trees were raised from their respective properties without permits. When I addressed the issue to the street representative, I was told that the trees were a problem, so she saw no issue with it. I found out from our immediate neighbor that our streets used to be full of oak trees, and gradually they were removed. By the way, our neighbor has maintained their oak tree, though they have reported to me that they have been consistently harassed about it. They state they feel pressured to have it removed. As I review the design review guidelines, which were recently updated in 2018, I see the following. A minimum of 2 shade trees, 10 to 12-inch minimum height, or the equivalent, with other tree types are required to be planted in the front property on single-family home sites. Lake lots are required to include 1 shade tree at the rear of the property. The irony of all this is that several of the residents have cut down native Florida trees in preference to Cuban royal palms so they can get the Florida look. Obviously, palm trees do not classify as shade trees as defined by the guidelines. We expect a prompt response to this issue, and I feel it needs to be addressed given the fiduciary responsibility of the association's adherence to these guidelines. And what I did is I do have a copy of our DR regulations that this resident is in fact factual in his statements and regarding what is and is not required. The point I'm bringing up here once again is consistency. I don't care if it's a tree, a crosswalk sign, a painting of whatever, a color of a house. No one has the authority to remove a tree until it goes before the appropriate committee and is approved. If the tree is removed or if the roof is not cleaned, appropriate actions need to be taken by the board or its designee. I can tell you that that's a fact. Many, many trees have been removed and either replaced or not replaced. So I would expect that there were probably 500 approvals to remove all of these trees. Not saying that they're not dirty or they cause a problem. Again, consistency in how we enforce our policies. So in fact, how do we go forward with this? That's not going to be up to me as a single vote here, but we need to have consistency and let people know they don't have the authority to issue those trees to be removed unless it does go through the proper channels.
So this is a microism of a lot of the things I deal with, and from, I'll tell you, my second week here, I was driving down the street, I saw someone removing a tree, and it was a huge oak, and it was already beyond, and so I went up and knocked on her door, and she had not applied for it, and she just bawled. I mean, she was emotionally distressed. And after researching that matter, I found that the previous general manager had authorized verbally for those trees to be removed without going through the ARC process, which is, I don't have any factual knowledge of that, but due to the fact that so many people have done it, I don't doubt it. However, my stance was strong and that we still needed an application, even if the tree was removed. And then, the possible resolution would be she may have to replace the tree. Now, I'm not saying that would be the ruling, but that's what the risk is for people to remove things. And, replacing a like oak tree is very expensive. So I don't know necessarily that there would be a motion needed, only maybe emphasis to the general manager. The deed restrictions, the enforcement policy needs to be consistent, and the ARC policy needs to be consistent, which I totally agree with, and I think my committees agree with as well. And we are on the road there. It's a slow-moving, huge Mack truck type of project. I mean, it's a lot of work to start out with. I started the deed restriction enforcement program 2 weeks ago. One street, 165 violations. One street, so that was just so many for our staff to handle that we're just now getting all of those taken care of and out the door. So next week I'll start, and that was, granted, the worst street in the community, and I think everybody probably knows what street that is. So the next week I will be doing probably the 3 next worst streets, and then that'll probably produce about the same amount of letters. And I think after that, then it'll be more community-wide, and it'll be a high number, and then that number will go down. But you're looking probably 6 to 8 months before this bear gets under control because of years of non-consistent enforcement. So I know I probably dovetailed into other things, but I do agree with the importance of consistent enforcement, I guess is my message to you.
And I appreciate that. And again, this has been, previous going back, even when I was landscape chair, nobody was adhering to that because of this consistent inconsistency. So I think going forward, people are going to have to realize, residents are going to have to realize that a lot of people who were just newly elected to this board ran on consistency. And if you, in fact, might have violated a rule, you may be expecting a notice saying you need to comply. We just can't, have in a deed restricted community, people not following. I'm not a gated community guy, but I moved here because of the consistency. And whether it's a tree or a dirty roof, I know this board is going to work towards that consistency. And I know, Jerry, with you, steering the ship, we're going to get there. But people need to realize that we're not going to live or I'm not going to live my life in a rearview mirror, who did what back when. This is a new time for this development, and we're going to move forward.
I agree.
And legally, Jerry doesn't have the ability to proceed with selective enforcement. It undermines his whole ability to proceed at all. So it's not really a choice. So
Thank you, Ron.
We all will go easy on him.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other additional agenda items for tonight? Okay,
I
think
see no other agenda items. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, I declare the meeting closed.
Next
And
item.
then we open up for resident comments.
Thank you. Steve Putnam. Pond watch sampling, I believe, is his topic.
It should be on. Doesn't appear. Briefly, I just want to let people know we, the Lakes Committee and volunteers, will be doing pond watch water quality sampling Monday and Tuesday next week. We will be going through people's side yards to get to lakes because we have 26 lakes we're going to be sampling, and we're going to do it as expeditiously as we can. We'll only be in any one particular location 3 or 4 minutes, but we're going to be doing that. People will see us out and about, and I wanted to remind the community of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the item, on the agenda to speak is Jeff, and can you spell your last name, Jeff?
Torno.
Sorry?
Torno. Torno.
Torn.
You're on.
Thank you. I live on Maribel Court. Jeff Torno, I live on Maribel Court.
Closer to you, please. If you put your microphone closer to your lips.
Okay.
Thank you.
I live on Maribel Court. I was one of the original amenities chair back in, I guess, 2012, and I was the amenities chair for 4 years. So I know what that role is about. And I'd like to refer to the presentation made by our chair tonight. I think it was well thought out in that he talked about an existing space that we use for tennis and pickleball. And within those confines, he was saying, let's refigure or reconfigure and resurface. It would be cost effective. It would also allow us to see how incremental pickleball use would affect the community, because that is a hot topic. It's a popular sport, but it is affecting some quality of life as it regard to the sounds, and that's certainly an issue. The cost effectiveness of it, the incremental change is key, I think, the way he described it, as opposed to building 4 more courts at the south or north end. I'm not sure what end it is, but it's certainly one of the ends, and that would require the natural huge berms that are there to be displaced and taken out. That would add to the sound issue significantly, and there's all our homes on Maribel, a lake, and then 4 more possible new courts with more pickleball. I think that's a disaster waiting to happen. We've seen it all over in other communities. There's video of it. It's in the newspapers time and again. And I think we really, really have to think about that before you make any kind of move, because once you make the move, usually you can't change it back. So I would ask you to think about whatever's the proper protocol, votes on it within the community, because it is a huge, significant issue. There's no doubt in my mind. And I think that's the key. It sounds like you want to advocate for us and you want to hear what we have to say. Ask us through surveys or something that's quantifiable and memorialized. Votes. This is big. And hopefully you understood my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda to speak is Grady Stevens.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to Scott's dovetail comment and also to your comment. I take it personally when you make light of the street that I live on and you get laughter about it. You come down to Verdmont, you fix the things in the community area on Verdmont that need to be fixed, then you can laugh at us for having the worst street in the neighborhood. The problem that I have with the trees, I filed the paperwork with Ernie Giordano to have two of those oak trees removed from my street, from my house. One in the backyard, one in the front yard. The one in the backyard cracked my pool deck and my pool. The one in the front yard broke the sidewalk, which I'm responsible for fixing. And if a kid hits that crack with a skateboard and busts his teeth out, I have to pay for that, not you. It also tore up my driveway, which I had to have redone as well. If you're telling me now that I have to put shade trees in my yard, we're going to have a big problem with that, because people have had these taken out all over the place, and I have the paperwork for having mine taken out. I replaced it with 9 palm trees in my yard. So just to make sure that we're clear, it may dovetail, and people may think that at some point we'll have this beautiful oak canopy over our streets. Before that happens, we'll all be dead and gone, and the roads that we drive on now will be like cobblestone streets that you find in Puerto Rico. It's not going to happen. These yards are not big enough for those trees. They're not attractive, they're ugly, and they're a nuisance for many of us. Having said that, I appreciate you taking the time to listen, but consider that there are a lot of other problems that we have beyond telling a homeowner that they have to put in what they consider to be a nuisance tree. Going further back along that same line, about having approval that probably should not have been given to me, I'll say the same thing about the tennis courts. How did we end up putting pickleball lines on our tennis courts to begin with? Who authorized that? Now you're telling the tennis people that not only do they have to tolerate having these bad lines all over the tennis courts, you're also telling the rest of the community now we have to figure out a way to accommodate the pickleball players so that they'll be happy with their own pickleball court. I, for one, don't necessarily care one way or the other, but I do have some friends that couldn't make it to tonight's meeting because they were out playing tennis on a night when there was no pickleball there. So just consider this is another one of those instances where we've given leeway to a certain people, and now we can't take that back. According to our guidelines, if we're going to go back to our original guidelines, it's like the Bible. You don't take part of it and say some people are sinning and others are not. If you're going back to the original, go back to the original, and we can all do it. We can do away with the potted plants. We can do away with all the different lighting. We can do away with all of these other things. But don't think that people are not going to get upset about it. You can tell I'm upset now, but my apologies. That's just the way I am. So I appreciate everyone listening to that, and that's just the other side of your comment, Scott.
I would like to comment too. So first of all, yeah, I owe you an apology for Verdmont, and sorry about that. And I don't think that anyone of the board has made a decision yet on pickleball. So I think that was just a recommendation for the amenity committee.
And Grady, if I could just, a couple things here. And again, this wasn't, as I said to my comment earlier, this was not does an oak tree or a shady lady cause damage or not cause damage? That wasn't my point, as I'm sure you understand. The point also being is, I can probably show you every center island to the neighborhoods where there's 2 palm trees planted, and I said this before, those are concrete coffins. We've expended thousands of dollars probably to replace the curbing along those monuments. So as a former $58,000. So as a former landscape owner, I could tell the residents that you're putting a palm tree that is going to do the exact same thing as that oak is going to do, may take longer, but you could see what it did, $58,000 worth of damage. And this is just for everyone out there, a piece of advice. There are ways to stop roots. I don't care whether it's from a palm, an oak, or a bottle brush. There's a thing called root pruning, and you could do root pruning. What's popping your sidewalks and your curbs are not the tap roots, which go down. They're the feeder roots that are going out. We can root prune, save the tree, save the headache of the wrong person giving you approval, number one, to remove the trees, and be in a spot where we still meet the guidelines. We could also say that, as well as the city, I believe, does, reading theirs, they do require shade trees, front and rear. But there's an option. 1 oak tree or shade tree needs to be equal to, I believe, 2 or 3 other trees. So if you remove your oak in a small area, you're still going to have to put 2 or 3 other trees, palms, as I believe the city states. It's a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1. So we still have a small parcel. It doesn't matter, again, what we're planting there. It's still a small parcel. So my point being is that a palm is going to do the same thing as an oak, as a shady lady, as anything else in a matter of time. So we're really not solving the problem. We're just lengthening the damage time that it's going to do when there are cures such as root pruning. And hopefully, I know with the great work that Allison is doing with her group, and she's going to be dovetailing with some other groups, we can get that message out to people and say, this is best practice to reduce damage. And here's where we might be able to facilitate some common ground and common understanding instead of having that stamping our feet, I've been wronged kind of thing. We could agree to disagree about the tree, but we know that any of those particular trees are going to cause the same problem in time.
I'll just add to that too, that the other issue is the oak canopy. I believe it in our doc says there needs to be a requirement to trim or maintain. I'm not exactly sure what the verbiage is, but you have these large oak canopies that are encroaching on other trees in the neighbor's yard. They grow together, they're hitting the house, they're going into the street, and I don't see us having any objective standards. If you go over to Somerville, these trees are, they have the same live oaks, and they have basically objective standards that their landscapers maintain, and they look pretty good. So I think there's certainly ways to deal with them, but unfortunately to date we haven't. And I think you can ride down certain streets and see some examples of pretty serious neglect and how it impacts other neighbors, the safety of the street, the sidewalks. So I do think there are steps that we can take, but we have to be clear in the way we convey them to the residents.
I don't think that any of us here are asking residents who have received approval to go retroactively back, Grady, and to take out what they've put in. We're discussing, the original discussion was removing something without approval first. You undoubtedly you got approval? Okay, so you got approval and you're safe. That
My concern is that Ernie had me fill out a document. I think I'm probably loud enough. Ernie made me fill out a document, and I gave it to Ernie. I don't know that this ever went to a committee. That's my concern, is that I'm sitting here.
It should be in your file. If you filled it out, it should have gone to, and this undoubtedly was a year or more ago, that it has gone through the proper channels, and you can, I suggest that you go to the office and just double check that it was done properly. But I cannot see, if I'm putting words in your mouth, please forgive me, but I don't think you're asking to have residents who have been approved.
No, the original conversation were people that are doing things without approval. And part of the education process that Scott was mentioning, that's what happens when someone applies. They are, in fact, educated with that ruling, if you will. So.
And circumstances always alter cases. I mean, there have to be a few extenuating circumstances that have to be looked at, and I'm sure that Carol, as the chairman of this committee, I've been at her home many times where she is there going through line by line and discerning exactly what need, if the request is covered under the docs. She's very, very consistent about that, and if there's a question, she goes back to the homeowner and asks for more clarification. And if there's still more needed, she takes it to Jerry and says, we've got to come to a meeting of the minds about this. Can you please assist? So there are steps in place, but the whole point was you were talking about unauthorized removal. And I just want to be clear for everyone who's here now and who's listening at home that nobody's expecting you to rip out what you've put in. If you've already had approval, you're safe.
I've got a question. A couple weeks ago, Don and I were on Anguilla, and there was mass tree removal going on.
There were 2 trees removed, and those were approved.
Yeah, I think it was more than 2.
Three.
They were going right down the street, ripping out oaks and shady ladies.
There were 2 removed. And
We
they
witnessed
did,
at least 3.
And again, my question's going to be, though, and I'm not doubting the committee or the chair people are doing their due diligence, but the first thing should be when we're heaving pavers and stuff is the first thing you need to do is get an arborist out there and root prune. If that doesn't solve the problem, then we can go to step number 2. But we can't just say, yes, your driveway's being heaved, take the tree out.
these were put in under 4 feet to the of the water main. The trunk of the tree was planted in less than 4 feet of the water line to the home. And that was a real mistake on Taylor Morrison's part. Unfortunately, those particular lots are extraordinarily small. They are half or less the size of any other lot. And because of that, there was no room. And a lot of the trees that went down in the villas during the hurricane, those all went through the process, and they all were given permission to plant smaller types of trees in their place because of the location of the water line and the house and the tree.
I totally agree. I mean, but we
and
could.
That was an extenuating circumstance.
Absolutely was, but we could drive down any street in this development and see no shade trees of any tree per se of any kind, whether it's a live oak, a palm, or whatever. So there couldn't have been approval for there. So these are areas that need to be addressed. Unfortunately, Pamplico is one of them. On the left-hand side, there's nothing there. Whether they were approved, fine, you had the approval, but the contingent on the approval was to replace it with something, whether it's X amount of dollars.
There were 2 homes that the trees were never put in. So there are extenuating circumstances. But this, I think, is a conversation that we need to have separate from this.
Yeah, I think we need to move on. Let's go back to our list. Are there more names that we need to visit?
Kathy Conway is next on the agenda.
Hi, can you tell us what the status of the Neighborhood Liaison Program is, and will you be soliciting for new liaison representatives from each of the streets?
Yes, I can. I'm sure we will, and I just have not had an opportunity to get to that point yet. My plate has been so full. I think we've spoken, and I've talked to a few other people and relayed that I would say within 2 to 4 weeks, I should be able to start working on that project and come to an understanding of what we need and where we've been and what we've done so far, regroup as a committee. And what my hope to do is, I don't think we've had this here, and maybe we've spoken on this, is to have a liaison chairperson, a liaison committee basically of a small committee of 3 that oversees all of the neighborhood liaisons. I've worked in those environments twice, and they're very efficient, if you will. So, 2 to 4 weeks, I think I'll be there.
Okay, that's great. Possibly, as a suggestion, you may want to solicit volunteers for primary and backup, because
absolutely.
people are looking to engage.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Next.
I'm sorry. Jerry Kern?
I'm with Somerville. Just had a quick question on the aeration project. Do we actually have a schedule of when we expect that the electrical and aeration installation will occur?
I think that'll depend on the city giving us the permits.
So we're waiting on permits?
Yeah.
Okay.
The procedure, the electrical proposal has been signed, and they're waiting for the deposit and then the applications for the permits.
Okay. Kind of right on the heel of that same topic, though, is I know that the existing aeration that is in Somerville, Somerville is still supporting the cost both for maintenance and electrical for that. Do we have any idea of when that would have been transitioned as part of this project?
I do not.
No.
I'll get back with you.
Okay, thanks.
Next, Todd Wynn.
I just got a question in regards to the violations. I'm all for it, but there's also selective enforcement in the community, and Molly mentioned something about this folder. Well, if this folder exists, I got a violation once that the prior homeowner got, And if this folder existed, I should have never received the violation that I never changed. But also under the prior GM and the prior grounds chair, there was a lot of verbal agreements. So what are you going to do when people get these violations, which I'm all for violations because I do follow the rules, but what are they going to say is I got the verbal agreement from the prior grounds chair or the verbal agreement from the prior general manager? How are you going to handle that? Because then if one says they got the verbal agreement, then hey, if somebody else gets a violation, they can say they got a verbal agreement. It's spread rampant, and that's what happened. I see it in my neighborhood. You got blue houses. You got people take down their trees. I mean, it is a common issue. Some neighborhoods worse than others, but it's just a known issue that, like I said, is a concern.
No, it's a concern of mine too, and there's a legal answer to that, and there's a practical answer to that. The legal one is clear. I mean, your deed restrictions say you must have written approval, right? So I think the association's in pretty good standing if they wanted to enforce it. That said, from a practical sense and a good neighbor sense, this is something, the reason the appeals process are set up, and 7 reasonable people can decide that, and that's how that will come to fruition.
Any other comments from the audience? Well, you all that are still here deserve a round of applause for putting up for the whole thing. And we thank you.
Molly?
Yeah.
There's